Welcome to the Town of Derry Planning Board meeting for June 4th, 2025. We typically start our meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. If you would rise and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll first go through some administrivia. If the alarm activates and there's an emergency that causes evacuation, please use the exit at the rear of the hall. This exit will become unlocked should there be an alarm activation. If you need to use the elevator, those will not work during an emergency, and so wait for first responders to assist you. The Planning Board voluntarily to remote participation. If any member of the Planning Board participates remotely, vote shall be by roll call. To attend the meeting remotely using a computer or other smart device, visit www.zoom.us and enter meeting ID 754-663-912. You may also call in by phone for audio only. Phone number is 646-558-8656. Same meeting ID, 754-663-912. If you have any problems getting into the remote participation, call 603-845-5585. If you are on the phone and you wish to be recognized, hit *9 to raise your hand to be recognized, and then once recognized, hit *6 to unmute yourself. I will introduce the staff and members who are present tonight. To my far right, we have excuse me, our alternates, Mr. Mousy, Mr. Wood, Ms. Lavoy. We have our planning director, Ms. Robidoux.
Good evening.
We have our planning intern, Mr. Principato. We have our planning clerk, Ms. Carvalho, who is remotely participating this evening. So let's all speak up and indicate who made and seconded motions for her benefit. We have Town Council Liaison, Mr. Chase.
Good evening.
Member, Mr. Healy.
Good evening.
Member, Mr. Minervini.
Good evening.
Vice Chairman, Mr. O'Connor.
Good evening.
To my far left, we have the DerryCAM Director, Mr. Preventure. We have our Deputy Director of Public Works, Mr. LaRue.
Good evening.
Member, Mr. Fishman.
Good evening.
Member, Mr. Pelletier.
Good evening.
And our Secretary, Mr. Malaby.
Hello.
I'm Dave Nelson. I'm the Chair. The first item on our agenda tonight is matters of escrow. We have item number 25-11 for JAL LLC. Ms. Robidoux?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is
Not sure your mic's on.
It is, it's just not loud. Okay, so this is a renewal of a performance bond in the amount of $188,814.24 for Denali Estates Phase 1, the Daniel Road portion. The new expiration date will be July 21st, 2026.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
Second. It has been moved by O'Connor, seconded by Malaby to grant the extension as presented. I will poll the board. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Minervini.
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Fishman.
Yes.
Mr. Pelletier.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next item is item number 25-12, CHI Overhead Door Company in what used to be the cinema properties.
Okay, thank you. So this is also a renewal of a letter of credit for that project. The amount of the letter of credit is $45,470.16. The new expiration date will be June 7th, 2026.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
Second. It has been moved by O'Connor, seconded by Malaby to accept the extension as presented. I will poll the board. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Minervini.
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Fishman.
Yes.
Mr. Pelletier.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next item on the agenda is correspondence.
Mr. Chair, we received the 2024 annual report from the Rockingham County Conservation District. So we've got that here for you.
Cool.
Yep.
Does anyone know what they do for us? No.
Master Gardeners.
Have to read the report, okay.
Well,
Got
they
it.
continue to provide technical assistance to municipalities as an independent and objective service when it comes to all things environment.
Oh, we
How
thank
good is
them for that. Under other business, we have a,
Approval.
Mr. Chair,
oh,
approval of minutes?
We got,
I skipped that, didn't I? We have 2 minutes. May 21st, 2025, and then May 22nd, 2025, which is a training workshop. Has the board had a chance to review those, and if so, are there any errors or omissions?
the gentleman next to my right, there's a slight
Oh.
modification.
Mr. Chair, the May 22nd minutes state it's on a Wednesday. I believe that was on a Thursday.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good
Thank you.
Scribner's catch. So, any other corrections?
Seeing none, we can do both of them together? You want-
Sure, with,
Okay.
as amended?
Yep, Mr. Chair, as amended, approve the minutes of May 21st and also the training session of May 22nd.
Second?
So move.
Okay, I will poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Minervini?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
I'll abstain from the May 21st, as I wasn't present, but I'll approve the May 22nd.
Mr. Pelletier?
Yes.
And Mr. Malamy?
I will also abstain as I was out last week.
Okay, and the chair votes yes. Other business. Review of development of regional impact for the Gateway Commerce Park site plan review in Londonderry, which was tabled from May 21st. We've all got that information in our packet. Apparently, while we were postponing it, my understanding is the town of Londonderry actually is having a public hearing on that tonight. They may continue, they may not. So if we have comments, we should forward them quickly. Has anyone had any comments on that site plan? Mr.
Yes, and
O'Connor.
knowing that the agenda for Londonderry is tonight on June 4th, there's a couple of questions, concerns that I have. Agenda and prior meetings, they discuss their stormwater issues, but they don't discuss the flow of the stormwater coming over the border near the Madden area, going downstream there. The other issue I have is the wetlands that impact their side, it also stops at the border. How does that wetland impact Derry's? And then the other one is Madden Road. What happens to Madden Road when it reaches the town line? It's got a very pronounced road on our side, but then it disappears, and does it just terminate for the town, or does it end up having a dead-end barrier there? And that's all I have, and the fact the public hearing's on, so we'll be able to watch that later on. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I looked at the Madden Road thing as well. I think it just dead ends at the town line from what I can tell, but certainly shows no continuation. Do you have any clarification on that, Ms. Robideau?
I do not without the exit 4A plan in front of me to verify.
Does someone have any really much better eyesight than I am? Because there's a small notation under the name Madden Road there.
Oh, we can verify it.
I wonder if it said, discontinued or something like that. It's been a while since I looked at the online version, which I could zoom into.
I know that Madden Road will continue in further, and I don't know if, thought I saw Mr. Lannon, who would know better, or Mark might know. I thought Madden Road, continued in, kind of stopped there, but wasn't there going to be another small road accessing near there, or is that closer to North High?
I don't have the map in front of me, but I do believe that there's no intention of connecting Madden Road to any development in Londonderry, as well as Corporate Park Drive. That's more a viable connection, but I haven't heard any discussion about using that as a connector either.
Do you know if the section of Madden Road that literally just dead ends at the town line is going to continue to be a public highway?
My recollection is that it's an easement or a right-of-way for access to the power
The tower.
lines.
There's a cell tower back there,
Yeah.
too.
It's been a while since I've been back there, but I know it's just gonna have one entrance onto the new 4A.
I guess where it's
connection.
going is if it actually is a way that the public uses, do we need some sort of turnaround there? Which is probably on us, not on Londonderry, but just a comment.
Yeah, I'd have to go check the plan again, the 4A plan.
Okay.
Because all that is being reconstructed as we are sitting here.
Okay. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I have one more. I just turned the page over and I saw that I missed something. This doesn't really pertain to this particular purview, but in their meeting, they're putting what they call a placeholder of 200 apartments on the north side of Rum Trail. So for the future, so just to keep in mind, that is it's in the agenda, but they refer to it as the north side of the road.
I assume that's
That's
another
200.
phase.
It would be.
So we'll get a notice of that when it becomes
Probably,
official.
yeah.
We will.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I mean, we can certainly ask for clarification on those issues. It doesn't sound like we're asking for any changes. Anyone else have something to say?
Okay, so I'll pass those questions and concerns along to Londonderry, and then with regard to the Madden Road, we'll find those answers and get them back to the board.
Okay, great.
Okay. Mhm,
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is Westbrook Inn concept discussion per the zoning ordinance section 165-32.4 sub K sub 1 for parcel ID 05047 and 05048, 45 and 49 South Main Street.
Okay. So in April of '21, the planning board approved the conversion of a school to a 6-room inn, an indoor event center, an outdoor event area, and a parking lot. And as part of that approval, the board also approved the creation of a parking agreement between 45 and 49 South Main Street. In December of the same year, the board approved an outdoor pavilion. The inn and event areas are located at 49 South Main Street with an existing 2.5-story office building located at 45 South Main. There are a couple of businesses operating at that location. The parcels are in the West Running Brook District, and per our zoning ordinance, applicants are required to discuss new proposals and preliminary concepts with the board so that the board can provide input. Additionally, this project proposes a small wetland buffer impact, and that will require relief from the zoning board for the wetland impact. As part of our West Running Brook regulations, the planning board needs to weigh in before they can go to the zoning board with comments on that issue. The landowner presented to the board in August of 2020 an overall master plan for the two properties that included a mix of office, residential, and commercial uses. This project proposes the addition of a 3-story, 6-unit inn containing a total of 12 bedrooms. The lodging will be made available to guests attending weddings and other events at the event center, and I believe the general public, but the landowners will confirm that. No formal vote of the board is required this evening, but the applicant is looking for general comments about the proposed project and any input the board would like to provide to the zoning board. Comments and concerns from staff. The inn is a permitted use in the zone. The board is asked to consider whether the addition of 12 bedrooms is appropriate for the overall site. And just to note that parking calculations resulting in more than a whole number are rounded up. We've got some fractions on the plan, but we'll address those later. The board should consider if the parking is adequate for the proposed use. Right now, the two lots share parking. 21 spaces are proposed for 45 South Main Street, and 350 exist at 49 South Main. Attached to your staff report, you do have just a copy, more for the newer members of the board, just a copy of the RSA that explains, why we would have a concept discussion. And this evening, we have Mark Siragusa and Brent Cole presenting.
Okay. So let me make sure that I understand which items on the plan are proposed and which are existing. There's a 2.5-story office building. I assume that's existing.
That is existing.
There's, on the other parcel, there's a 2-story wedding and event venue.
That's
I assume that's
existing.
existing, and the
Yep.
2-story, 2.5-story house in the garage.
Yep, so we're looking at map 5, lot 47, and we're looking at the proposed 3-unit, 6-unit inn that is adjacent immediately to the parking area on that lot.
And do we know if that inn is for general occupancy, or is it primarily intended to support the event venue, or?
I would look to Mr. Siragusa to answer that.
So Mark Saragusa, 49 South Main.
Brent Cole with Granite Engineering, helping Mark out with the engineering work on it.
My dad's here as well. Him and my mom own the property at 49 and 45 South Main. So looking at the site plan here to the left is, yep, correct there. The 3-story, 12-bedroom building that we're proposing. So our goal really is to just offer them at this time to wedding couples, and I'll give a little background as to why. May through October is our primary season for weddings in the tent, which is on the 49 South Main Street property. Once we get to November, we take the tent down through April, and historically we've done, since opening in 2022, baby and bridal showers in the off season. We're now turning those bookings into micro weddings, and a lot of them are booking out the property for the weekend. So our current inn has 7 guest rooms. They'll have their own private bathrooms and showers, and can accommodate up to 18 guests overnight with common spaces as well. May through October, we've been essentially full since opening. Even 2026, we're almost there, and we're starting to book 2027. But as I mentioned, November through April in our off-season, our occupancy drops significantly inside, and we've seen a lot of demand for the micro weddings since we've started to offer those. So currently, we can host overnight, really like the wedding party or the immediate family for weddings. This new building would allow us to almost double that occupancy, even a little more, so that we can capture both the wedding party and the immediate families. The reason for, again, really offering it to wedding guests and the families is because the demand's there. We really don't need to offer it to the outside public. We already have demand during the week for the general public to book rooms, but we're not currently set up that way. Everything we do on site, whether it's the weddings or the overnight lodging, which was really built specifically for the weddings from the beginning. We're on site, our family's on site, so we really want to have high-touch hospitality. And the more you do day to day, turning over the rooms, you need now cleaning staff in-house. You're just the overhead just increases dramatically. So again, financially, and the demand is there to really just offer this to the wedding couples on the weekend. Taking a step backwards as well, my parents ran the school for 40 years on site. When we converted it into the inn a few years ago, everything we did was to bring in the New England charm, all the new renovations, take that into account, but also have a bit of a modern touch. So lighter colors throughout the property, natural lighting, but again, maintaining that the colonial feel and the charm. So this building would do that as well. It would blend in with the other historic buildings, not only our house being the oldest in town, built in the 1720s, but The 2.5-story office building as well is historic since the 1800s. So again, continuing to blend in any new structures into that.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Does anyone else have comments or questions or suggestions, since this is a conceptual review?
I guess my only comment is there, with the new building in the parking lots, are they connected in any way, or do you have to drive out onto, say, South Main and then come in the other lot?
So currently, with the way the parking lots are laid out, there is a walking path, hardscaped walking path between the two properties. But if someone were to drive a car to get to the other parking lot, they would have to go out to the main property and go next door. Now, we always have attendants in the parking lot directing traffic. One of the key things, way back was the not wanting cars parking on the parking lot, or excuse me, on the main road. So we've been very sensitive to that, always having an attendant in the parking lot.
Okay, that's it.
And just to speak a little bit more on the parking, I know that obviously the Westbrook Inn understands what their parking demands are. There was a waiver submitted last time for a reduction in parking. It is in the Westbrook Inn's best interest to make sure they have parking for their customers, and they're very aware of how much parking they need, and they don't need to build more just to have it. This parking lot that we're showing here does exist. It would be restriped to try to be as conforming to Derry standard as possible, but it would be shared with the 2.5-story office, assuming there wouldn't be much conflicts with the times that the office runs versus when Westbrook Inn runs. To the left of that is obviously the building that you see there, 3-story, 6-unit, with a sidewalk. And just want to reiterate kind of why we're here tonight, just to make sure we're getting your comments before we move through the process. Ms. Robidoux talked about a variance that we will need. There is a small pocket wetland of very low function value. It looks like it was man-made based on kind of what the development to the south did, the old office building, and then the development on 49. It looks like it was a leftover area after construction activities occurred that it just never really drained properly. So there is a wetland on site. We are aware of the 30-foot buffer, and the building is situated within that buffer. So we will have to go through the zoning process as our next step before we're back here with site plan approval.
Okay, thank you. Mr. O'Connor?
Yes, thank you. My question to you is that we saw the master plan that you had put together over 5 years ago. Is this still part of how the master plan you have put together?
So the building there was originally placed in the master plan. Even the parking lots that we put in are roughly where we had originally proposed. So the open space remaining was other buildings that we're doing this in phases. So when we had first come, we had what's now known as an award-winning nationwide restaurant. We've never released the name of it, but they were all going to be our core anchor. They were going to turn the school into a tavern or house fine dining, and then we were going to build them a barn for weddings and events. At the time, COVID happened, so nobody was opening restaurants at the time. So we took on the operation ourselves, went with the outdoor space and converting the school into an inn rather than a tavern. And at the time, the master plan had the ability to go more housing or lodging, a blend of both maybe, depending on what the demand was. Currently, the wedding operations were, like I said, pretty much full throughout the season. We don't want to do anything to disrupt that. If anything, we want to meet the demand. There's already really no lodging in Derry. We're sending most of aside from the guests who are staying in the inn, we're sending most of our other guests to Salem, to the Artisan Hotel, the Holiday Inn, La Quinta, or they're going north to Manchester. So this is just capturing that, keeping them in town for the full weekend. Often they're going to other restaurants and cafes in the area or going to the parks. But yes, we do still plan to, depending on how this next phase go, if there's more demand, maybe there's other commercial to come in, or we continue to build out more lodging.
Okay. The other question I have, just to wrap this up, and I'm assuming you're going to be taking care of that. I know that we had a discussion 5 years ago on lighting, And now that you have that building coming in and the walkway through the stone wall coming down, I'm assuming you would have adequate lighting for
Yeah.
public health safety.
Yeah, so the lighting we went with was more ambient in the parking lot, to not take away from, I guess, what is somewhat of a resident, like kind of a residential, like across the street, it's more farmland. We didn't want big, bright lights in the parking lots, so the pathway between the two properties, though, currently has bistro lighting that is lit at night based on solar, from
Okay.
solar, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other
Looks good.
comments or suggestions? Mr. Chase?
Just one quick question. The proposed inn, there won't be kitchens in each unit, will there?
We are considering, so one of the things we're seeing, as I mentioned, with the hotel guests going off-site, they're either going to hotels or Airbnbs. Beaver Lake has a lot of them. So we are considering putting kitchens in to have that for the full weekend stay. So one of the downsides to our wedding venue is that we don't offer in-house catering. Well, it's a downside and a benefit. So a lot of our couples see it as a big benefit and value add because they can do whatever they want for catering throughout the weekend, whether it's the rehearsal dinner, the wedding, or a farewell brunch. So we provide all the on-site staff, set up, tables, chairs, linens, all the management of the weekend in-house. But when they're here for, waking up in the morning, as the wedding couple is getting ready on site, they either have to bring in their own food or order it out and, to be delivered. So this would give those families who are staying the weekend the flexibility to prep on site and better accommodate their food needs throughout the weekend.
Any other comments or suggestions, questions? I have one suggestion. Where the footpath joins the two parking lots across the property line on Lot 47, the path terminates into the head-in part of a parking space, which may cause difficulty, especially if you need a walker or some other thing. And I'm just going to suggest that maybe you bring it along and bring it in to the space between the rows of parking to avoid conflict between cars and pedestrians. Just an idea.
Thank you. Yeah, the current walking path is almost a dogleg the opposite way. So it goes the end of the parking lot and dogleg to the right to the other lot. So that's something we
Yep.
surely need to look at more.
We'll work on touching that up a little bit.
Okay, if there's no other comments or suggestions, thank you for bringing this to us, and we look forward to seeing the formal site plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is planning director or chairman updates.
Okay, thank you. So our next meeting, June 18th, we'll have a lot line adjustment plan between Family Promise and a property adjacent. And then following that, we move into summer schedule. So if you would like to make note, we'll meet on July 16th and August 20th, and then we'll resume 2 meetings per month in September. You've all had a chance to meet Nick. Nick's joining us for the summer, and I'm very grateful to have an intern to help shoulder some of the planning things that are coming, especially our zoning changes. I did want to mention that many of you know that Dave Karen will be retiring at the end of this month, our town administrator. And his last town council meeting will be on June 17th. If anyone wants to swing by and say goodbye to him, he's been a real asset. We're looking forward to having Mike come in as administrator, but we are definitely going to miss Mr. Karen.
All right, thank you. I don't really have any updates because we're currently fully staffed. Yay! Next item on the agenda is public hearing for Martin Auger, PID 19065, 601 Colette's Grove Road, PID 1065001 and 190650002. This is for the reconsideration of the consolidation of 3 restored lots and a 2-lot subdivision.
Okay.
So if you remember, we had heard this, we had a public hearing, we had approved it with conditions. There was an appeal by a butter requesting reconsideration. We held a discussion at our last meeting, decided to grant reconsideration, and so that's where we're at right now.
Okay. Do you want me to read my staff report?
Please.
Okay, thank you. So the planning board approved the consolidation of 3 restored lots with a subdivision of that lot into 2 on May 7th. Following that approval, as noted by the chair, we received a request from the abutter at 604 Colette's Grove Road, asking the board to reconsider its decision. That letter, along with an email received from the abutter at 607 Colette's Grove Road, is attached to the staff report. At its May 21st meeting, the board voted to reconsider its decision, citing improper notice of abutters, and a new hearing date was set for this evening. Ms. Rome, I'm sorry, Amy, I'm pronouncing your name wrong, believed the vote should be reconsidered for the following reasons. Dissenting votes, 3 members voting against the subdivision, Pelletier, Chase, and Fishman. Incorrect abutter information, James Willard sold his property to Don Fecto, Sam Chakarian sold to Paul Jackson, and Dan Doherty was listed with an address in Franklin, where he also has an address at 1014 Colette's Grove Road. She also cited flooding concerns in well and septic placement. Regarding the dissenting votes, review of the record shows that the vote on the waiver request was unanimous to approve. The vote on finding of facts was 6-3, with the dissension as noted by Ms. Room. And the application itself was voted in favor unanimously. Regarding the abutter notices, I won't read the whole thing, but RSA 676 for Roman numeral 1D says the planning board shall notify the abutters, and it kind of gives a description of what abutters are, by verified mail as to the date of the application where it will be formally submitted to the board, and it needs to be mailed 10 days prior to that public hearing. The abutter notices were mailed via certified mail on April 23rd. Abutter information is obtained utilizing the Town of Derry's tax record. The planner's handbook recommends that that gets verified at least 5 days prior to filing an application. And we usually recommend that. We usually ask our surveyors and professional engineers just to double check everything before they send the abutter list in, but staff does verify it. The registry will send a list of property transfers to the assessing office once a month, and the April transfers were received by the planning department on May 19th. Review of the abutter notices sent for the May 7th hearing yielded the following. The Willard property transferred ownership on April 22nd, the same day that we received the application in the planning office. The Chakarian property transferred to Jackson in February, but the notice was mailed to 404 Colette's Grove Road. We tracked the certified mail in the year. There was a comment in there from the post office that the notice was attempted to be delivered to the property. Notice was left of an attempted delivery, and the envelope was delivered to an individual in the morning of May 29th. The tax record for Doherty still indicates a mailing address in Franklin, and he does own the property in Colette's Grove Road. For those reasons, I do not believe the notice was deficient. Planning board's reconsideration of its vote. This is for the board to discuss. Our policies and procedures allow for the board to reconsider its own decision within the appeal period, which you did. Generally, planning board appeals are regulated under 677-15, and those appeals go to Superior Court. In RSA 676-5, Roman 3, the zoning board can hear an appeal of a planning board decision if that decision made by the board was based on the terms of the zoning ordinance. That doesn't apply here. And then, once again, the planner's handbook, which is it's not a rule for us, but it's kind of a guideline that we follow, suggests that land use boards, which would include the planning board, can reconsider their own decisions. Our policies and procedures will outline the process for rehearing, but our LDCR does not, so there's nothing in our subdivision or site plan regulations that rules on this. For the zoning board, when they consider whether to reconsider a decision, it's recommended they grant the request if the petitioner can demonstrate a technical error or it's found there's new evidence that was not available at the first hearing. The new evidence should reflect a change in conditions which occurred subsequent to the original hearing, or that such information was unavailable at the time of the original hearing. Absent rules for a planning board reconsideration, it would seem appropriate for the board to follow the same process. I do want to note we have abutters here this evening. The Fectos, I believe, would like to speak as well as others, and they have provided some pictures for the board to see. My recommendation, there's a copy of the original notice of decision attached to your staff report. I recommend the board make a finding of fact as to whether the board agrees or disagrees with the reasons the board was asked to rehear the application. If you don't find technical fault with the original application in hearing, it would be appropriate to reapprove with the original conditions or any other conditions you deem prudent. If you vote to deny, then specific reasons for the denial must be clearly stated. And I'll turn this over to the board for their discussion. This is a very unique situation. I'm only aware of 2 other times that the planning board has had a reconsideration discussion.
Yeah, so as to the, your suggestion of findings of fact, I think the planning board took a vote that it found cause to grant reconsideration. So I think that ship has sailed. I don't think we need to discuss that further tonight.
Okay.
So we're here at the reconsideration. I believe that your suggestions on the last paragraph on page 2 regarding why boards should choose to change their previous decision, typically it is based on new information, information that was inaccurate, or information that was unavailable. And so we should probably focus on those issues, and we will be opening the public hearing shortly. And so if anyone here wants to speak, please focus on new evidence that hadn't been considered, because honestly, if you just say, well, I don't have any new evidence, but I think you made the wrong choice, that's probably not going to help you, just saying. So can we have a motion to open the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
A move by O'Connor, seconded by Mallory to open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. I notice that we skipped the acceptance because it's already been accepted.
Right.
Okay. So public hearing is open. Anyone has comments or questions on the plan, please come forward.
Did you want me to say anything or just bring it right up to the public?
So name and address record and then say what you have to say.
It's Ryan Laveau with Laveau Associates. I prepared the survey plans, and I just didn't know if you need me to go over anything or say anything before you started taking public comments.
Has anything, to your knowledge, changed since the
Negative.
original decision?
No,
Well, then
I'm
maybe
just
you
here
can
for support.
stand by and see if any questions come up. But thank you
Sounds
very
good.
much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, one question for clarification. He brought it.
Well, so, no private, I mean, if
Yeah,
this is a matter
that's
for
right.
public, just got to make it public,
Oh,
John.
where's he going?
He's not leaving.
All right, here's my question. At the last meeting, it was discussed that you were going to remove, put the locations for the well. My question now is, what type of a well is it? How deep do you go? Is it a trench well or is it an artesian well? And what's the depth that you draw water from? Yes. You're the engineer. Put you on the spot.
He's probably not the well driller, but okay.
Yeah, I can't say I'm the well guy. I don't really understand your question about wells.
Is it going to be a drilled artesian well?
Yeah, standard
deep?
drill,
Okay.
standard drilled
They'll
well
have
on
no
both.
idea how deep it will be until they're done.
Well, if he's in the area, my question to him would be is, what is the average of
Yeah.
all the 70 homes that are there?
Yeah, I don't,
What I've been told by
I'm
well
ignorant
drillers, and
to
I
well
currently have
depth.
well issues, is you never know.
Okay, just a question.
They
I'm
won't commit.
ignorant to well depth, not my purview
Okay.
on how it will be, but standard drilled wells on both lots. The existing dwelling already has a standard drilled well, so I would assume that both would be the same.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have comments or questions regarding new information or technical issues or things that were unknown at the time of the hearing? Please come forward, name and address for the record. Thank you.
If the board would please.
Please name and address for
Oh,
the record.
sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
Dawn Facto, and I own 3732 Lot 401. I have a, excuse me, I'm a little nervous. I have a prepared statement, so I was not given the opportunity at the first go-around to have my say. And I understand that it's already been voted on, but I would like if the board would indulge me to just let me have my say and read my prepared statement.
Sure. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I just want to say thank you all for being here tonight and affording me the opportunity to speak. My name is Dawn Facto. I, along with my husband, Stephen Facto, own and reside at 32 Colette's Grove in Derry, New Hampshire. We also own 37, 34, and Lot 401, Colette's Grove. We are both members in good standing of the North Cove Yacht Club, which sits on 100 feet of the Big Island Pond shoreline, directly in line, directly in line with the lot or lots in question, which is 601 Colette's Grove. I'm also a board member of the Colette's Grove Association in good standing, so it's not out of line to say that I am invested in this community, both emotionally and financially. I'm in no way here to cause or try to cause Mr. Auger, am I pronouncing that correctly? Auger?
Is anyone here know how to pronounce his name? Auger?
Auger, thank you very much. To cause Mr. Auger any hardship. That hardship was promulgated by the involuntary merger of 3 lots located at 601 Colette's Grove. With the restoration of Lot 601 back to its pre-involuntary merge status, Mr. Auger then wants to reconfigure the 3 lots into a 2-lot subdivision, thus affording himself the ability to install a new septic drainage system and water well. The community of Colette's Grove lives in what one might call a fishbowl. What one neighbor does, especially when it comes to water dispersal, very often impacts another or the whole. Colette's Grove has had and does have a major drainage issue, which becomes more pronounced the closer you get to the lake, Big Island Pond. If it is the intention of Mr. Auger with these newly subdivided lots to build up his property, leaving himself high and dry, it will be to the detriment and devaluation of the surrounding neighborhood in the form of increased runoff and newly dispersed surface and subsurface water and contaminants. Also increasing the certain likelihood of the newly dispersed runoff and contaminants leaching directly across the North Cove Yacht Club property and into the lake. If I may pose a question to the board, if and when said runoff is now on my property, where do I go for recompense?
So we have land development control regulations, and they state that the off-site flow of surface water in the post-development condition must not exceed that of the pre-development condition. So it can't get worse, but we don't require that the landowner make it better either. You can't.
Could I just ask if you put up some of the pictures that I took, please? Oh, he left.
Oh, yeah, I imagine someone can do that. We actually did see some of them. But yes, it is our anticipation that if that were not the case, then your recourse would be code enforcement, because that is a requirement of development.
Okay. I was almost done. At the end of the day, I know how these things most assuredly go, and Mr. Ogier will most likely get what he is seeking, but at least I will know that I tried to protect my assets, both personal and real, respectfully to all involved.
So the way the planning board works is that if the application that comes before us meets all of the technical issues of state law, the zoning ordinance, the subdivision regulations, has the appropriate variances when appropriate, we're not allowed to say no, because.
And I
So
understand
let me
that.
continue. But we can apply conditions. So for example, we did apply conditions as to where the roof gutters would fall regardless to the property line. We indicated that roof gutters needed to go into a subsurface water reintegration system as opposed to just flow on the surface. So we did make some conditions to attempt to mitigate any additional runoff that could happen, for example, from the roof, right? So we did that. But beyond that, we need to find some issue that's non-compliant to the regs in order to simply say no as opposed to apply conditions, right?
And I guess I'm not asking the board, I was not looking for a no, because I feel for Mr. Ogier, he has a right to, their pictures are up there now. He has a right to develop his property. My main concern is the drainage. And simply redirecting the water from the, I can't even think of my words now, is just not gonna be enough. And so I don't, if anybody cares to look at the pictures, these were just taken May 23rd, and they were taken the first day of the rain, so it continued to get worse.
So what are we looking at in these pictures? We're looking at abutting
So,
properties?
No, that is 601 Colette's Grove, that picture right there.
Okay.
And then if you want to flip, I can explain. That's also 601.
Yeah, it's a little hard for us to figure because those look like properties that have houses on them already, so.
Well, so that's also 601, but you're looking through at the properties on Lane 10, which is that,
Have those trees been cut down?
they did take 2 of those trees down since I took the picture.
All right, so maybe I can actually ask the engineer to come back, since we have a specific question. And the specific question is, there's evidence of ponding during heavy rain on the property. What is your analysis of the water flow off the property in the post-development condition? Have you taken an analysis of that? Could you please come up and talk to us about that?
Can I explain that, the picture behind you? There is a right-of-way that runs directly behind 601 Colette's Grove, and that is a picture of the right-of-way. And actually, the stake right there is the property line for 601 where they had it surveyed.
Well said. I was going to say the same thing, is that it does appear like in that area, all the low spot is this unbuilt lane that's in between these properties, unbuilt lane being the unbuilt right-of-way divider. The water pictures is pretty evident that a lot of Colette's Grove, as she stated, has drainage issues. It's a pre-existing, non-conforming subdivision with a lot of small lots and, no catch basins or retaining ponds and such. What we were trying to do with our proposal, really, and doing a drip trench for the gutter is just exactly as it was said earlier, is that we want to abide by what we have to abide by, which is not increasing the runoff with post-construction. So that was our idea of doing drip trench drainage, as well as, I think there was wording at the last meeting of best excavation or building process in regrading these lots. I don't see us building it way up to the point where it would be on a big hill and making it worse. So I think that was the spirit and intent of what we discussed and what we're trying to do. I hope does that answer that? Does that help?
And you feel confident that the runoff from the subject property and the post-development condition will not be any greater than pre-development?
That is the plan. That is what we're supposed to do. So anything that we have to do to make that the case, we don't want to get into any issues with that and further exacerbate the issues that are going on Colette's Grove.
Okay, thank you.
There are pictures there also of the property directly in front of 601, a little closer to the lake. And I put a picture of the North Cove Yacht Club, which borders the shoreline. We have 100 feet of shoreline there. And as you can see, the ponding is pretty severe. And again, these pictures were taken the first day of the rains on May 23rd.
So the engineer has said yes, there's a lot of pre-existing conditions with ponding and no closed drainage system, no drainage system of any sort, actually.
There is, actually. So the town of Derry recognized our main roads as public. We switched from private to public roads. Shortly thereafter, the town of Derry recognized our drainage issues, and they came down and they put catch basins in along the main road, and also purchased a lot on the main road and made it a
Retaining pond?
excuse me?
Retaining pond?
No, it's not a retaining pond, it's underground.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is drainage for the main road, but not for the lanes.
Not for the lanes, the lanes are private. That's another major concern, is that the Colette's Grove Association, which is, all of the homeowners, pay to regrade the lanes. Sometimes it could be twice a year, and it probably needs to be done even more than that. And the majority of the reason that it needs to be done is because of the water damage and the potholes in the roads and everything else. So that's another concern with the drainage of the water, that it would actually cause more upkeep to the side private lanes.
So if the engineer has said that they're going to do everything that is required to make sure that the net flow off-site is no greater than the pre-development condition, what else would you like them to do?
Is it possible that they could hook up somehow to the drainage system that was installed by the town of Derry?
Well, that would be an off-site improvement, an exaction, and of course, it would require buy-in from the town of Derry, so that's not something we'd considered so far. I don't know how feasible or expensive that is.
I don't know
So,
either.
LaRue, do you have any offhand comments on that?
The only thing that I'm aware of is that we have done some improvements to the main access, and if we've put any drainage in, I wasn't specifically part of that construction, but everything is flat. You're not going to be able to pick up everything. And unfortunately, you know, you talk about the association enjoys the frontage on the lake, but it's clearly none of these lots meet town minimum requirements. So everybody gets to enjoy the lake, but at the same time, you have to take the problems that are associated with the density of the construction and the topography being not, you know, even if we do have drainage, it's too flat to extend for wherever we've extended from. So it makes it difficult to place the tax, you know, on the tax burden on the town for making this area sustainable, I guess, through a rainstorm. There are a lot of limitations with the terrain.
Okay, thank you.
It absolutely is a give and take situation down there. In order to enjoy the lake, we do have to, you know, give a little bit on some things. I just cannot see how the development and septic system on these lots is not going to impact. And also, I don't know if a permit has been filed with the shoreland protection either, because that's another concern, is that the runoff is going to be redirected, as stated, through the North Cove Yacht Club property and directly into Big Island Pond, possibly contaminating the waterfront of the North Cove Yacht Club and the other neighbors along the shore.
Do you want me to answer to that?
Yes, please.
All the construction is outside of the 250-foot buffer for Island Pond, so we do not have to do a shoreland plan for it. I located the edge of the water. I know where the buffer comes into. And secondly, I think with all the drainage talk, there isn't a house there now. That's why we're here, and there's massive drainage issues going on right now. So I think with what we were kind of trying to talk about is trying to make the owner try to fix all the drainage for what's already existing out on the site. And his responsibility really, as we stated previously, is just not to increase it after post-construction. So I think as long as that's met, I don't see enforcing him to do anything more than what we already discussed with catching the rainwater off of the roof, best construction processes. If, like we mentioned earlier, if code enforcement finds that we are, even with the drip trench, increasing into that, there's other matters that can be done rather easily, such as rain gardens in the rear, berms with plantings, anything like that that could help mitigate if necessary. But at this point, I don't see the necessity in that.
So the engineer is correct. I don't believe the planning board has the authority to require the developer to mitigate existing conditions. Just can't make them any worse.
Any reasonable person looking at the pictures above you could not possibly see that the ponding on that property is not going to leach out and affect surrounding properties more so than it already is.
Okay, we've heard from you, we've heard from the engineer on that, so the board will have to weigh that evidence. Do you have anything else to say?
I do not.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Could I ask a question of
Absolutely.
the speaker? When did you say these pictures were from again?
May 23rd.
Do you have any pictures of what it looks like today? I know in May it was a lot of heavy rain. I had some ponding on my property. Is the water level still like this, or is it kind of subsided? Has it, dispersed? Do you know, could you describe what it looks like?
I haven't been out there myself. I don't know if you were asking me. I haven't been out since probably about when these pictures were taken, setting monuments
Mr. Chair,
and such.
I can answer that question
Yeah.
for you. I went there last week when the rainstorm that we had the following week. Then I went there at the beginning of this week here, and I was really amazed that the absorption, there was maybe one little puddle in that whole area, and not be argumentative with you, but it was pretty damn dry, and I was impressed with that. A little mucky under where they're gonna build the house that you're talking about. So it did disappear. That's why I was asking the question about the
Gotcha.
water level and so forth, because obviously there is a drainage through there.
Gotcha.
I don't know if that helped you.
Yeah, that helps. So, we all know that there was a lot of rain in May, so pictures in the, May with heavy downpour, that's sometimes expected. Like I said, I had ponding in my yard, and if it's kind of dispersed and the applicant has plans to, make sure it doesn't get any worse, I'm pretty satisfied with that. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to, okay, we have a couple folks, so, gentleman in the green shirt, come down, well, light green, you had your hand up first.
My name's Chris Rourke. I live at 607 Colette's Grove. I would just like to elaborate a little bit on what Don was talking about. This particular lot acts as a drainage basin, and I think these pictures do not do justice to exactly how much water is there. I don't believe it's possible to regrade this lot without pushing the water elsewhere. It's not just rain that falls on this lot, it's a collection point for the neighboring area. I've heard a couple different times and at the previous meeting that there is a plan to deal with the drainage, but I haven't seen the plan. I would like to see something a little more concrete, because I think it's not going to be possible to do this without making it worse for the neighboring lots.
So let me ask this, if indeed your assertion is true that this particular lot is currently a de facto detention pond,
Correct.
do you believe that it is incumbent on the landowner to keep it in that fashion to serve
No,
the rest
actually,
of the?
I hope he can fix it. I welcome him to the neighborhood, and I would love to see, a nicer property there, a nicer house there. But it's not just when it rains for a couple weeks. It's all of the snow melt. That lot is literally underwater for at least 4 weeks or more every spring. That is actually a very good picture there that kind of gives you a better feel for what it is. And did you walk the lot, sir, when you went out there?
Yes.
So did you sink
It was-
into the
it was-
mud and all of that?
That lot there was individually a
Yeah.
little bit muddy,
Yeah,
because
'cause-
the bulldozer was there.
The visible ponding has dried up. We've had some pretty nice sunny days recently. But the land itself, I bet if you dig down, you'll find the water table about a shovelful down. So there really isn't anywhere for it to go other than into my lot and other lots. And we already have plenty of problems with water as it is.
Yeah, Mr.
So
LaRue
that's just
has-
my concern, is I hope he does solve it. I want him to solve it. But I would like to see something more concrete as opposed to just a promise to do it. I think if the law is that he can't make it worse, then I believe that we should see the actual plan before moving forward with any approvals. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think Mr. LaRue indicated that it's a matter of the land being fairly flat, and in order to have drainage, you need pitch. Does anyone have any idea how far the current surface of that lot is above the water level of the lake? No, okay. Anyone else? Sir, in the teal shirt, you had your hand up.
My name is Steve Facto. I live at 32 Colette's Grove Road. And I've prepared a statement that I'd like to read and have submitted to the record. I wasn't here for the initial meeting,
Okay.
so it touches on a couple of things here.
Are they similar to what we've heard before?
Yeah, it talks about potential runoff into the lake across the Lane 10 lots and across Lane 10 over the Colette's Grove Road Beach, North Cove Yacht Club into the lake. It's happened. Like Chris Rourke said, that property is a holding body for water and snow melt. And it's concerning that the water from that property ends up in Big Island Pond. Location of septic on the property also is a concern because it's within 75 feet of existing water wells, and it places a burden on the existing homeowners to have to repeatedly test their water now if the septic design is so approved.
So let me ask a question of Ms. Robidoux and Mr. LaRue. Does the town of Derry have concurrent permitting with the state on septic, or just the state controls it in Derry?
The state controls, we inspect the bed bottom.
State, yep.
Yeah, so whenever the state grants a permit for a design, that's who gets to say. The planning board doesn't really get to override that, just so you know.
Okay? Just doesn't seem right that they can come in and place a septic within, 35 feet of an existing water well. Put yourself in those shoes.
We did talk about that at the original hearing in terms of recent changes to the DES regulations on that. And we got a copy of the regulation, which was a little obtuse in my view, but apparently they have relaxed the regulations recently. So.
Okay. And so those were the two major concerns. And I have some closing comments about increasing water runoff into Big Island Pond and negative impacts on existing water wells and neighboring properties far outweigh any perceived aesthetic gains from new homes or improved exterior appearances to existing structures. And for those reasons, I submit that the overall negative impacts generated by this proposed subdivision far outweigh any perceived positivity. In fact, there's nothing really positive about the proposal from a homeowner, landowner perspective. There are only negative ramifications for any neighbors in the Clutts Grove Road community as a whole. So thank you for the opportunity to express my opinions and to
Yep, well, thank you for summarizing, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anyone else have comments? Okay, no one else in the audience? All right, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, I did have
move
a question for the engineer. Should we
Okay.
do that during the public hearing or after?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it now.
Perhaps it's a bit of a technical question, but seemingly the argument rests wholly on ensuring that the post-development outflows do not exceed the pre-development outflows. I'd like to better understand how the pre-development outflows from this lot are measured, and then how the post-development outflows would be measured.
Right. I can only say so much because I'm not a PE, just a surveyor. But I know whenever you do say a subdivision with a road, the reason for the retaining ponds and whatnot is that it holds the water and releases it at the same pace that it would pre-construction. So this is a much smaller scale. So what we're trying to say is that by doing mitigation with drip trench, that it would hold the water and release it at the same speed in which it is now, basically. And we spoke to it a little earlier, was if somebody comes forward during the construction process and they seem to think that the drainage has gotten worse from the construction and the code enforcement officer agrees, there's other measures that can be taken on site at that time to mitigate it even further. I don't see that being the case, but there's space to do so, and if necessary, that could be a new condition of approval, I suppose, to further reiterate that point.
Ms. Roboto, following up on Mr. Fishman's question, how often in a minor subdivision do we require hydrology studies to actually establish, in terms of cubic feet per whatever unit of time, what the precondition outflow is? Or do we only do that in major subdivisions?
Major subdivisions.
So it would be unusual for us to require that in such a small subdivision, but I understand the basis of your question. How do you know if it's exceeding if you don't know what it is now?
Yeah, there's a concern that it may be leading to a code enforcement issue.
Right.
I do have another question. If indeed the lot is currently serving as a bit of a, a basin, isn't it potentially, or isn't it possible that the foundation area, the square footage there, is now removing from the absorption capacity of that lot?
Potentially. I can't really answer that, to be honest with you.
No, I mean, I'm not sure if drip trenches would necessarily cover, I mean, that's assumedly covering the rainfall hitting the roof, but there seems to be other water from other places on this lot or other lots flowing into this proposed subdivision already, and they're going into a, an area which is being absorbed by the earth. If there's concrete there or whatever the foundation structure is, it seems like it will reduce the absorption capacity of that land.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a factor to consider. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at when I asked one of the abutters whether the current landowner had an obligation to continue to serve as a detention pond for the community.
Right.
Because all of that water is probably not coming just from the rain falling on that property. It's probably running off of adjacent properties. So he's serving a community benefit by acting as a detention pond. And I guess my question is that a reasonable reason to tell him, you can't build a house there, you have to continue to be a detention pond? I don't know. I would find that hard to
Seems like
justify.
it might impact the pre and post development outflow calculation, because if there's a standing inflow taking place already, how does that even factor in, when we're making our decision?
Right, I assume that our pre-development conditions do take into account inflows, whether they be streams or surface flow or anything like that? I mean, if you had a hydrologist in, would they do that?
I mean, to be basic about this, the rain falls, it's going to be absorbed by the ground, or it's going to settle in low spots, and eventually it is going back to the lake, whether it's through the ground, through the surface, or a combination of those. The only things that you're doing when you're trying to control drainage is to slow it down, to let the particles, to let the pollutants settle out and have the water eventually get to the lake or any low stream or low spot in a cleaner fashion. That's the objective of trying to clean stormwater, because it is going to fall in the lake. It's all going to drain to the lake. That's the low spot.
Right. That's kind of the definition of watershed, isn't it?
Right. So the terrain, honestly, I don't even know how most of these septic systems work, because I know the groundwater table has to be pretty high for an extended amount of time of the year, and that's probably why a lot of these were seasonal, because in the high season, in the springtime, in the wintertime, or whatever, that's when you're going to have the most groundwater, and you're going to have issues with septics. In order to get septics here, I'm assuming that a lot of them have to be built up.
Right.
And now you're building these things up. You're putting structures in. Now you have these very thin lanes, and they're private. The best thing that you can do is to try to create areas of detention, pockets of detention, and make sure that you routinely clean swales and allow for water to get to those detention areas, and have a way to leave those detention areas in a cleaner manner. That's the basics of what you're trying to do with stormwater. In order to achieve that, you have to have some topography that allows for flow towards the low spot, but at the same time, it takes a combination of maintenance and infrastructure improvements that people have to take as a group. If you're an association, if you're emphatic about protecting the lake, you have to take that in consideration when you're grading the lanes and you're doing development within your own lots. Everybody has to pitch in, so to speak. That's really the long and short of it.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. O'Connell?
The only one comment I wanted to make is we've always talked about the inflow of water. Regarding the outflow, I went onto the DES website, and they have a very nice booklet on the deep trench with dry well, and how it does, it is not 100% mitigating all the water, but it does, as based on the depth of it and the amount of rocks, and not to get in, into the weeds here, but it helped move things right along as compared to what's there now. So there is some assistance, and we did have it noted in our conditional approval of the last meeting. And if nobody has any questions, I had a motion that's not been seconded yet.
I did have one
Close the
final.
public hearing.
I did have one final
Oh.
question. Do we have a date of when the actual perk test was taken?
You may
Not on me. I don't have the septic plan that I had last time on me.
Is there potentially a concern of the water, the seasonal water table affecting the result of that perk test?
I imagine so, but I would think that the state DES would take that into account in their permitting.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
What's that?
I'm sorry. I don't have any further questions.
Okay.
Can we reinstate the motion to close the public hearing?
Yes, I am.
Second. Moved by O'Connor, seconded by Mallory to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. Questions, discussions, deliberation among the board?
Are there different depths of drip trench which
They did show that.
Which are
8,
called for?
10, 12.
Sorry?
It did fluctuate in their magazine, on their article.
the decision based on, pre and post development outflows is, that's a difficult one for us to make because it seems like there's a higher than normal chance, given the current condition, of causing more outflow than a normal development would. And so I believe that taking as many mitigating impacts, not to improve the existing area, but to ensure that the post-development outflow doesn't exceed the pre-development outflows, might be warranted, just given the amount of water that's already standing on the lot.
So when you design these mitigation things, whether it be a trench or whatever system, do you have a professional engineer? Do you have a hydrologist? Who's involved in making those design decisions?
It's usually just a standard detail that's on the plan. It shows a depth, shows a width of a dry well usually, and they just build it per the spec of the design. It usually doesn't change on what area you're in. It certainly can be deeper if
Well, I'm not
if
sure
it's better,
deeper
but
would help if the
yeah,
seasonal water table's high. So
right.
I guess what I'm wondering, along with Mr. Fishman, is whoever designs that, maybe just not pull it out of the catalog, maybe actually think about the problem to be solved there and the potential volumes of water to be mitigated and given the current water table, because you can't drain water into a water table very well.
Understood.
Melanie, if you have an issue, please bring it up.
I was going to say, we covered that issue there on number 12 last time. Add surface water management, utilizing best management practices. And then we went on to say that the new home shall have trench infiltration or equivalent before occupancy. So that's where the code
Yeah, but
enforcement
what
comes
Mr.
in.
Fishman is asking is, who designed that trench, and what reason do we have to believe that it's adequate by its initial design, and we
Was
don't know?
Approved by DES. 'cause
No,
it's
no,
on
no, the
DES.
trench is, what I understand, you just pull it off a CAD library and just stick it in there.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe you need to do more than that, but we can discuss that. Anyone else have?
Nope.
Mr. Malaby?
Mr. Chair, I just want to confirm the vote to approve the application was unanimous, correct? It was just the finding of fact was 6-3? And we don't believe there was any, upon reading the staff report, we don't believe there was any technical error which led to the application passing, correct?
Correct. And from what I had summarized from the testimony tonight, we haven't actually heard any new evidence. We've heard elaboration of the previous evidence that was heard at the first public hearing.
Yeah.
Because there is water there. It's near a lake. The seasonal high water table is probably pretty high, so, yeah, it might be a tough place to build.
Thank you.
And just to Mr. Melby's comment, I believe Ms. Robideau's commentary there was pertaining to whether or not the board accepts the rehearing.
No, we already did that.
Right, and we did, so.
That sailed, so we can just ignore that. What we have to decide tonight is, do we reaffirm the approval, or do we find, based on new evidence, there's a reason to deny it? It's pretty high legal barrier to deny something as opposed to add more conditions, but I guess the question is, does anyone think we heard new information tonight?
I think
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
the testimony of the standing water in the lots and the fact that it potentially collects may be considered new evidence. I mean, some of that was heard, but not in the same degree of, not with as much testimony. My feeling is that since we impose conditions on this plan, it's our prerogative to perhaps be more specific about the nature of that mitigation practice. If that's the best we can do, then kind of as you said, it may not be a standard trench. Maybe some analysis is required to understand if that will truly mitigate the impacts during development and after development.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with you on that one. We could enhance that condition of approval if we choose to affirm the decision. Mr. Connor, did you have something to say?
I was wondering, can we do that? Add another
Well,
condition?
we're reconsidering it, and that means it's open for yes and no again.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Healy?
Yes, I just want to state again for the record that if we were to deny this application, I believe it goes back to 3 lots, which would then make it so you had 2 buildable lots. So I just want that on the record, that a denial then makes it increases the amount of buildable lots in that area.
Right, so I think where we're getting to is we haven't heard any substantive new evidence. We've heard greater detail about the current problem that we knew about. And so I tend to agree with Mr. Fishman that the best we could do is enhance the condition about the drainage trench to require that a hydrologist or a PE look at it as opposed to simply pulling it out of the CAD library. I don't know how anyone else feels about that.
That, to me, is gonna be a long, drawn-out process. I mean, we just had the 3rd wettest May on record. I mean, when are you gonna see that again? How long do they have to look at this before they make a determination? I mean, how long is this gonna drag on? You know, your inflow, your outflow, I mean, it's basically all inflow now. And even if they brought it up level, if it stops the inflow and the outflow with the, whatever they put in is zero, the neighbors are still gonna wind up with the water that they've been dumping on this lot for all these years.
Mhm.
So there's no win there. It's that water's gonna go somewhere, or it's gonna stay where it's at, one of the two.
Eventually, it's got to end up in the lake, because that's...
Eventually, it's gonna, like Mr. LaRue said, it's gonna wind up in the lake, it's just how it's gonna get there.
Exactly.
I voted no on the finding of fact. I still disagree with the regs on the well radii to the septic, but that's not our purview, that's the state. The state's gonna have to deal with that. There's nothing we can do about that. As far as the rest of it goes, I have a hard time denying somebody the use of their land because everybody else's water is coming onto it, and now they don't want to deal with their own water and deny this gentleman the use of his own land.
I agree with that as well. I don't think, I don't personally think a denial is warranted based on the facts
No.
and the law.
I have a hard time putting the burden of a long, drawn-out hydrology study on that also, because now we're coming into the dry season. What are they really gonna see? If the weather maintains the way that it is now, we don't have an overly
All right,
wet
so
summer.
maybe to expedite actually getting a motion, I'm going to make a non-binding poll of the board, ask a yes or no question. Would you prefer to reapprove the application as it was originally approved without any additional conditions? Mr. Chase.
I would say yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mr. Minivini?
No.
Okay. Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
No.
Mr. Pelletier?
No.
Mr. Malamy?
Yes.
All right, you taking a head count here?
There were 3 negatives, and the remainder were positive.
Oh, I'm sorry, how many?
1, 2, 3. So three negative, and the remainder were positive. So it'd be 6-3. 6-3?
Okay.
5-3. 1, 2, 3,
Let me ask another question.
5.
Is there a reasonable additional mitigation that you would feel comfortable adding to a reapproval? Mr. Chase?
If we could come up with a reasonable one, yes.
Mr. Healy?
So I voted to reconsider based off of the idea that not all the abutters were properly noticed. I think they were, and I am satisfied with the original plan.
Okay. Mr. Minivini?
I would like to see more information about inflows and outflows of water on that property. I think we need, I have trouble, I guess, voting to approve this without something more specific than the original stipulation.
Mr. O'Connor?
I want to stay with the original. I don't need to see any additional mediation at this time.
Okay. Mr. Fishman?
I'm inclined to continue approving this. Really, I'm stuck on the fact that we added conditions, and I think with good cause, and I think we need to be a little more specific about those conditions. I'm certainly not looking to impose a long, multi-season, drawn-out study on the applicant, but due to the unique conditions of this lot, I think it bears a more thoughtful approach. Not saying that it's not a thoughtful approach right now, but it may require some degree of, if not study, at least a more intensive mitigation measure along the lines already specified. Our surveying engineer suggested there may be other mitigation efforts. I'm not sure if that helps with percolation or with absorption as much as it would outflow. But, you know, I'm in favor of approving this and just being a little more specific with the conditions that we already added.
Mr. Pelletier?
I'd like to echo what Mr. Fishman had said. I'm inclined to approve it if we can be a little more specific just with our requirements.
Mr. Malamy?
So I was here for the original public hearing, voted to approve, was not here last meeting. But I read looking through the minutes, you don't quite get the full zest of what went on, but I haven't heard anything new tonight that would cause me to want to, deny the application. So I'm comfortable with moving on as is.
Yeah, I don't want to deny the application. I will note that the applicant has indicated that if pull them out of the CAD library solutions don't work, they're willing to be held to the requirement of trying something else until it does work. And maybe we could simply
We do have
add
it
that
as a condition.
as a condition.
We already have it in there.
What does it say?
Hang on a second. Just read it a few minutes ago. Add surface water management utilizing best management practices.
Potentially, could that be modified to say, utilizing best management practices and in specific consideration of the lot's unique structure or condition? I don't know if that would-
I think so. I mean, to some extent, best management practices has loopholes you can drive a truck through because it's very subjective. Would anyone be opposed to amending that condition along the lines that Mr. Fishman has stated?
Again, I would probably oppose it. I'm fine with the original approval. And, hearing from the applicant, the representative from the applicant, I'm pretty confident that they're going to, do the best that they can on this property and handle any of the issues.
All right, I'm not hearing a consensus, so we should probably have a vote and see how it comes out. I guess I would solicit a vote to reapprove under the original terms and conditions of May, whatever it was,
May 7th.
May 7th. Does someone want to make that motion?
Also move it.
Second.
It's been moved by O'Connor, seconded by Mallory to reapprove the application as originally approved on May 7th. Any discussion? We'll poll the board. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Minuini?
No.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yeah, I'm going to vote yes, because I don't believe there was any technical error, and that there was no new evidence that was presented tonight, and since the first hearing.
Mr. Fishman?
For point of clarification, when you're saying the original application, are you saying including the conditions we added
Including the conditions that were approved on May 7th.
that were approved on May 7th? No, I think we need more due diligence on the conditions, but I'd like to see this approved. I just think we need to do a better job with the conditions.
Mr. Pelletier?
No.
Mr. Malamy?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So how many do we have?
3 denied, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 3.
5 to 3 approved. Okay. Well, thank you all. It's obviously a challenging situation down there in terms of the technicalities of the drainage and also the technicalities of the reconsideration process. So I thank everyone who has participated. And yes, if the things that you put in don't work, code enforcement will probably be after you to come back and do something else. Okay?
Absolutely. Understood. Thank you, members of the board.
Thank you. Do they?
Yes. They can go to the planning board or the zoning board now, before they go to the Superior Court.
I know that's true of the original. I don't know if it's true of a reconsideration. So
That's-
I'm not
that's
going to
a
go
good-
there.
That's a good point.
All right. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, we have a workshop. Number 1, the presentation of the Gateway District report and discussion of the direction for possible zoning changes.
All right, we're going to turn this over to Mr. Malaby, who's going to provide the Gateway visioning recap. And then following that, the intent is to move directly into a workshop. Okay.
All set. Thank you, Owen. I am not a wealth of information here on the board. I've only been here a few years, but I can say for the newer members, it's the first time we've ever had a workshop where we haven't had everyone in the audience just scurry for the exit immediately. So it's, thank you very much for the folks who are joining us. Tonight I'll be presenting the visioning recap, the culmination of 8 months' worth of work between the Gateway Committee, the Derry planning staff, the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, and the stakeholders in Derry's new Gateway District. The goal of the committee is to provide direction for the planning board to update the zoning ordinances and land development control regulations in the Gateway. From its inception, the committee has favored a collaborative approach with the community, hosting 3 targeted visioning sessions, followed by 1 comprehensive district charrette in order to determine the needs and desires of the existing stakeholders. Tonight, I will put forth our findings. Following the presentation, we have a few more steps. We, as the committee, would invite discussion from the entire board regarding action items and deliverables. From there, the committee will draft zoning ordinances and return to present them to the planning board for input. We will repeat as necessary until we have come to agreement on a document ready for a public hearing. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, this presentation is not the end, nor is it the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. Without further ado. Oh, thank you, Owen. So our project objectives, I'll try to resist the temptation with a PowerPoint to repeat every word for word, but we've got a few objectives here. Address opportunities and challenges posed by the new gateway created by Exit 4A. Essentially, we're looking for input from the folks who live there and work there. You know, what do you want to see? What do you like about where you live and work? What do you not like, and what would you like to see? We kind of wanted to create a roadmap. And we were faced with a few unique challenges at first. When we convened, we didn't really have a set of standards or plans to go by. You know, the question was, is this something that we want to do and then present to the folks in the district? Or is this something that we want to meet with them, hear from them? And ultimately, I think we took the wise approach. And you're going to hear about that, our visiting sessions, on, I believe, the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, Owen, I tricked you. Create a vision and a plan for the area. So it's essentially, you know, what do folks want, and how do we put that together in the zoning ordinances and the LDCR, and then support development and redevelopment in the gateway. Our challenges were a bit unique. You know, you look at the Londonderry gateway plans, and they've got these vast swaths of farmland where they can kind of, you know, build hither and yon. We're faced with a lot of, you know, smaller parcels, residential, you know, and the question is really redevelopment. You know, what do folks want to see? Do you want the ability to merge your lots? Do you want to keep them small as is? And I think as we go on, you're gonna kind of see the consensus lean in one direction rather than the other. So our timeline, I alluded to, our initial meeting was back in October. Again, same kind of thing. You know, what do we want to do? How do we want to approach this? And we took the mindset of, well, let's target this, you know, because really you're looking in that area of town at 3, you know, different areas. So we gathered public input in 3 sessions. The first session, we actually kind of did them backwards. It was areas 3, 2, and 1. Was on January 6th this year. It's more of a residential area south of Folsom Road. We had a second session on February 10th. Area 2, it's sort of Franklin Street Extension south, going toward Ash Street Extension. And session 3 was on, I didn't write the date down, but I believe it was on the 24th. It's sort of this triangle between Manchester Road, Folsom Road, and up the Franklin Street Extension. We took everything that everybody had said, we brought it all together in one charrette for the community, which we'll get to later in the matrix. And then that last bit is kind of where we are now. It's the regulatory change. So don't be fooled by it being at the end of this at this diagram. This is kind of where the planning board comes in now, and we talk about what we found, what folks want to see, and how we can make it happen. So what did we hear? So you can kind of see, it's a little difficult to see, but the 3 focus areas, the one on the far right, that was our first charrette. Then we had number 2 up top and then number 3 on the bottom. Man, this is a map that came from our big gateway-wide meeting in April. And this was kind of neat. This was something that was introduced to me. I'm sure our planning director knew all about it, and Ms. Neighbor from the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission mentioned it. But it's a dot map, so folks were able to go over in their neighborhood, and they were able to say, well, this is where we'd like to see more housing, more commercial, industrial, or maybe we don't want anything here, which. Honestly, it makes sense. You see that in the residential. There's a lot of folks who say, well, we like the area we live. We want to keep it as is. Thanks, Owen. What did we hear? This is probably the most important part of this presentation, but it's also one that I'm going to move by kind of quickly, because at the end of this, we're going to go through it line by line, with the board. See what we agree with, see what we want to move on, see where we have questions. But just real quick, I'll hit the highlights of what we heard, the bold on your left side. Preserve the neighborhood character south of Folsom. You probably saw that on the last image. A lot of folks say, hey, we want to keep this as is. We like where we live. We don't want any major changes. Pedestrian first streets and safety enhancements. And this kind of goes together with below it landscape and beautification. You call that landscape buffers. Folks want to see green space, walkability, and they want it to be safe. Mixed-use, small-scale, community-serving businesses. I found that in the whole gateway-wide charrette, you had a lot of folks that, they were scared off when they heard mixed-use, because they think big developments. But then when you really kind of ironed it out and you talked about coffee shops and maybe residential, rentals and such on the second floor or even third floor of a building, and smaller bistros and whatnot on the first floor, they said, hey, that's something I'd like in my town. That's something that I would be willing to go to and spend money. Which I suppose goes hand in hand with this next one. Discourage large auto-oriented or heavy uses. There was a lot of opposition to, you'd hear used car lots, but also big box stores. Targeted economic development needs. This was kind of an interesting one that came through in as a whole, the gateway-wide charrette was folks saying, well, we have existing bike paths and whatnot. We'd really like the businesses along that support that sort of walkability, folks on a bike, walking a dog. Although we were very careful to always mention, folks want to talk about what is it, the spaghetti loop and the, what am I thinking of? Yes, yeah, and certain things we can't discuss are out of our purview. Similarly, it's a bit of a tangent, but you've got folks talking about traffic patterns and whatnot, and we said, we're sorry, we'd love to help you, but unfortunately that's DOT, that ship has sailed. Traffic management and access control obviously goes hand in hand with that. Hospitality and visitor services. I mean, you couldn't help but hear Mr. Saragusa, an hour and a half ago, and he was talking about the need for hotels and whatnot. Flexibility through overlays and form-based approaches. I believe it was the first meeting in October. I said, well, how about an overlay? And I think I got my hand slapped a little bit for that one, but that's experience is the best teacher. But that is something we talked about in form-based zoning. Do you care so much about what sort of businesses you have in your neighborhood, or do you care about how it looks? And then inclusive ongoing public engagement. Obviously, the most important thing we talked about, and we figured we couldn't be wrong, if we involved the community and got their input. Similarly, I'm hoping we can go through the larger matrix when this presentation is over and see what the whole planning board thinks. Next step, uses, character, regulations. We found, and you're going to hear, that a lot of folks like where they live. They like what they've got around them. There wasn't, You know, I don't know as if, off the top of my head, we ever heard anyone talk about drastic change. So I like the phrase our planning director used in there, gently tailoring the list of permitted uses. So maybe we take what we've already got and just slightly expand it. Workshops, this is the first of at least 2, and hopefully only 2, but we'll see how well I do here. But we'll take it back to the committee, draft up some rules and regs and bring them back. Yeah, and amendments, refine the permitted uses and regulations. Call to action, already touched on it, but hopefully talk about here what we like, what we don't like, you know, where the planning board has recommendations, things that we can do. That'll echo what we've heard from the stakeholders in the area. And then we'll get to the question and answer, if you wouldn't mind. And big thanks. We've got the Gateway Committee itself as Brian, Dan, Mr. O'Connor, the folks from the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, Suzanne Neighbor, James and Cam were here for our big Gateway charrette. The staff has really been terrific, Elizabeth, Carolyn, Bev, and then everybody in the district. So with all that said, we're going to go through the matrix, but does anybody have any questions about this kind of quick, this is an executive summary of the executive summary, which was in your packet. All right.
Okay.
We all right to move on to the matrix, Owen?
I don't know if we loaded the matrix.
We go through the matrix line by line, because there's a lot of them.
Yep.
And I guess my question is it anyone's intent that we incorporate everything in this matrix in the first iteration of change, or we grab the low-hanging, high-yielding fruit, make some changes, and then see how that works? Because my experience in these sorts of things is if you get too many moving pieces, it's really hard to actually get consensus, because it has to get consensus from the board. We have to hold at least one public hearing. It has to go to the town council. They will hold at least one public hearing, and it has to get buy-in from the council. And the council certainly is interested in doing what folks who live in town want. But they also had some, I think, goals about economic development that I think we're represented in that room, but maybe not the majority of voices in the room, just by population. So do we think we want to kind of go through a rank priority first and then decide, well, you know, maybe we can do 10 as opposed to 50? What do people think about that approach as opposed to trying to get them all in?
Soft approach is the right way to go.
Well,
What's that?
The soft approach is the right way to go.
and I would say that, you know, it looks intimidating because it's 4 pages, but some of the, I think maybe many of the topics could all be dealt with one change. Like if you amend, you know, if we talk about amending our landscape and buffering regs, many of the needs or the wants and what was said can be addressed in one change that will hit multiple wants and needs, if that makes sense. And I think really the committee needs a roadmap on how to move forward.
Yeah, it'd probably be helpful to know what that grouping would be, so that we don't have to look at each one and say, oh yeah, that's the same as that one. Oh yeah, that's the same as that one. I don't know, we're obviously not probably positioned to do that tonight, but I'm trying to figure out, given the time, how we get to some sort of specific guidance for the committee in the next hour.
So one idea to address that, the way the chair is recommending, could be to resort this by the anticipated tools, so that we're looking at land development control amendments, we're looking at zoning amendments, as a block. So all lines that pertain to land development control amendments, we could maybe cluster. There may be further subdivision in there for related items, but that could be one way to approach it. So we're looking at what's the actual output. But ultimately, unless the chair or the board decide otherwise, the plan seems to be that the subcommittee will actually draft the language and find all the locations where it needs to be integrated. That's a huge body of work. So we're hoping to get some pre-filtering by the board for really high level. You know, the fourth column here, is this a realistic goal, yes or no? We're looking for high level steering input. Are we touching that or not?
Yeah, that's another good way to look at it, because while we would expect the staff and the committee to do a lot of the work of drafting, one of the other things I've learned in life is that when a small group of people go off and create a work product and then come back and present it to a larger body, the first reaction is to, what? And attack it. So what I'm trying to do is get the board to buy into what you're doing before you spend a lot of time doing it.
We'd like the same thing. So this was our attempt to parse everything out into individual comments, and then they're grouped by maybe area of concern. Again, looking at it by what ordinance or you know, document would be affected might be a better way to approach this. But we would like to really look at every line item and just get a high level yes or no. And if it's a no, it can stop there, and the board won't, the subcommittee won't discuss it further. If it's a yes, we'd look for some kind of guidance, you know, but that certainly may turn into additional cycles.
All right, I guess the best thing to do is to go through these and maybe try to fill in that last column. Is it a,
Realistic goal.
yeah, okay. Because realistic, the last one says priority. I mean, so realistic and priority, because there may be a lot of things that are realistic, but maybe aren't the priority for a first bite at the apple, I don't know. So let's focus on that column with the idea that it's a realistic, and then how important is it really?
That would be acceptable. That'd be great.
All right, so I guess they're all numbered by, you know, like number. So first one is 1.1, keep existing single-family scale. I assume that's in certain districts?
Yes.
Yeah, so it looks,
Folsom.
South of Folsom.
Preserve neighborhood character.
Oh, yeah, well,
That's the,
hanging
Yeah,
things
sorry.
there, okay.
I just did that to keep you on your toes. Yeah, so this is the, like I had hit those in the matrix in the presentation, kind of the high level, and this is more bit by bit. So yeah, and preserving the neighborhood character of South Folsom, it's keeping the existing single-family scale by having
So,
height limitations.
Let me ask this, is there another left-hanging indent that says new opportunities and new uses in south of Folsom?
it's kind of implicit by the lack of that, and that this was one of the strongest opinions heard during the public engagement. The community does not want to see a large expansion of uses
So
in this area.
maybe this is radical, but maybe we could shortcut things by saying, let's just make no changes there of any sort in this first pass. Because if we're adding a couple little things here and there, and then we have to add all these other mitigations, which are quality of life mitigations, but then someone else in an adjacent neighborhood says, well, why don't I get those? Because there is a townwide equity thing to be considered here. If most of the changes we would do south of Folsom are to protect people from traffic and you know, pedestrians and whatever, but we're not actually adding new business opportunities, maybe we just skip that section?
I think that is certainly one of the decisions the subcommittee was looking for from the board is, are we comfortable leaving the MHDR zoned region south of Folsom as is, not adding uses? There certainly was a lot of feedback from the community about concerns of cut-through traffic as a result of the DOT work going on. So much of that is outside of the board's purview, but there was an interest in soliciting some, not guidance, at least having conversation in a public forum as to how that communication could be passed on to the appropriate town bodies.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that if we would take a town-wide survey, there's probably very few neighborhoods in town that wouldn't want mitigation of cut-through traffic and traffic calming and all those things. So, unless there is a change in use that creates a nuisance, then we're not really mitigating something that's changed. We're trying to just improve life for folks in that area in a way that we're not willing to do for other parts of the downtown.
I think one way to address these public concerns has actually to do with north of Folsom. Finding ways to mitigate the amount of curb cuts there may ameliorate some of the traffic impact on those on the streets south of Folsom. But yeah, outside of zoning, if we're not changing anything, then I agree with your assessment.
Was there any testimony, significant testimony, that we should change something in that area?
No.
No.
What about traffic calming?
Well, all I'm saying is
Outside.
if we're not changing something, then it's sort of like the other things we've talked about. If it's an existing condition, we don't need to mitigate it if we're not making changes, right?
To the zoning
There-
itself.
There was significant support for things like cottage courts and home-based businesses in the residential neighborhood, based on the results that we got for the visual
Right, so
preference
home-use
surveys.
businesses
Yeah.
are typically granted by the ZBA by special exception, not within our purview, technically using that term.
Yeah.
And you'll have to explain to me what a cottage court is.
So that is smaller residential developments. So if you had like an entire block that someone wanted to redevelop, not so much tiny homes, but smaller homes clustered together, like
cluster
more
development.
cottages, yeah, cluster development.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
So that's a new word for cluster development. 'Cause
Yes.
cluster development had a bad rep at it.
Yes, but it's not the 4,000 square foot homes in a conservation subdivision. It's more
So
manageable.
How
Yeah.
like, the
Yeah.
home businesses, I can see, given that there aren't very many vacant parcels of land there, how likely in the next 10 years is cottage-style development?
I guess it would depend. I mean, you have on that south side, on what is now the corner of North High coming into Folsom, you do have that parcel on the right that's not a bad size, that has some redevelopment opportunity if you wanted to retain residential there. Right now, it's MHDR2, so multifamily wouldn't be allowed. So cottage court would be a form of multifamily, but it would be, single units spread out over one lot.
All right, let's put that in the parking lot to revisit, because I think if we're only talking about one parcel in that whole district, and there's a lot of craft that goes around to make it, and we'd have to sell this new form of cluster concept, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm thinking there's probably lower hanging fruit.
Yeah, and there are other lots that will be available in that area, but we'll see how that goes once the construction finalizes.
So where was their testimony supporting new uses?
There was some vision board, if you will, voting, if you will, by, placing stickers on different smaller scale mixed use, but based upon the conversational and recorded kind of commentary by people voting for that, most of that was desired north of Folsom. Unless Ms. Robideau, there was additional commentary that, I know we had the,
Yeah, February 10th, allow use for cafes, small restaurants, and MHDR, which look like single-family homes. Small entertainment venues, people were okay with that. There were some yeses for something like a Mr. Steer or a small market, and some desire for things like small doctor's offices.
so I mean, it seems like a combined measure of expanding the use as well as potential architectural design
Yes.
regulations to preserve the residential character.
Yeah, okay, so we're proposing allowing what new use in the residential district? Little bistros and,
Yeah, based on the input. So we would look for small, micro retail, potentially.
Boutique.
Boutique type, yeah.
okay. And that would be in the south of Folsom area?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to look at the zoning map to see how that lined up with this, but my eyes are not
Yeah.
that accurate to
Yeah.
focus at that scale.
Yeah, it's mostly, the majority is MHDR2 there, with the exception of the two lots that are closest to Crystal. Those are general commercial.
And so I'm guessing that the uses we're allowing would not be high traffic or high noise or high impact of any sort, right?
No, and I think the potential use list, it would involve two steps if you wanted to create change in that area. You would need to change it from MHDR2 to something else, because right now MHDR2, it's just single-family residential and ADUs, that's it. And then you'd have to define the area where that would be, and then create the use list, and the use list would be tailored to the comments that were received. So it might be a very limited, depending on how it shakes out, it could be a very limited retail business area.
Okay.
So if the board's interested in, in that, the committee could look at that and kind of defining that.
So will we be changing the zoning matrix that we have here? for the B,
Not,
C,
not,
D, D,
not
or-
currently, we're just thinking about it.
And does this matrix marry up with this book?
It marries up with this report that you received in your packets, yes. Which we'll put online tomorrow for everyone to see.
So if we were to allow those micro retail, whatever catchword we want to use, inside a home, so that's what all of the 1.x things are, is to put limitations on
Yes.
the footprint of those.
Yeah, so allow things similar to what already exists at what's now at the Carson residence. Small business attached to the home, or the home gets transformed to a small business. It doesn't all necessarily have to be home occupations. You have opportunities there for, a residential home to be converted to a business if the zoning allows for that, but really controlling it by how it looks. So you're maintaining the character, and you're also controlling the amount of traffic, going to those sites.
It's the traffic stuff I guess I have
Yeah,
a problem with, because that's a big off-site exaction. If I have a home and I want to open a little store to sell, muffins, to have to install all this infrastructure as a condition of doing that seems I don't know, stretch to me. I understand that the neighborhood, the neighbors want what the neighbors want, and it's for reasonable for them to want it.
Mhm.
Question is, how reasonable is it to put all of that burden on one little potential business owner?
We have similar conditions in the office business district.
Yeah.
Coming
How much
in
of
on
that
the
is
Londonderry
currently
side.
residential?
It's a good mix. I think it's, I want to say, isn't it like half and half, Randy, down there? Yeah, it's about half and half. Like, it's slowly converting to, the residentials are slowly converting to business use. But it's, it's a good, but, as you drive in, there's a lot of redevelopment of the properties, and, people are starting to change over siding and the way the buildings look, but you still have that residential feel as you come in from Londonderry on 102. There's a definite change as you cross the border from one town to the other.
Oh, well, I will observe based on our previous agenda item, Londonderry's plan for their gateway district is to take greenfields and make them a large scale. So there's that, and that's just across the town line, across the highway.
Obviously, some of the considerations here that we're going for are in line with the master plan to support economic opportunities as brought about by the Gateway District. This is right there at the entryway. We really, the community does not want to disrupt that residential feel, and so the subcommittee felt that this may be a way to serve both masters and allow for business use without disrupting the local feel of the residential area.
Yep, delicate balance to try to strike, that's for sure. Okay, how do we, given that there was desire for those opportunities of more than an in-home business, but less than a full-scale business, does that seem like low-hanging fruit for us to pursue those changes and then all of these mitigations that people want?
Yeah, I don't think it's a real heavy lift, honestly.
I'm going to continue to be skeptical about some of the
Okay.
traffic mitigation things, because personally, I hate them. And if you want to open a little shop, but, you can't have people drive by too fast, or I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about some of that, the crosswalks, bulbs, chokers, and neck downs. I mean, that is really the highway department's problem, right?
Yep.
Right,
And
yeah.
for clarity, these aren't wholesale.
No.
These are individual line items summarized kind of by the region or by the implication of the change. So while there was a lot of feedback, it was also communicated that a lot of that is outside of the potential scope of the changes here. So I think the most straight line to what we could come away with is certainly, is there interest in expanding potential use in this region for, for business? But in doing so, we felt strongly, based on community feedback, that should be constrained through architectural regulations, design criteria, so as not to disrupt the character. All the other measures don't have to
We
be.
can certainly do that. We have architectural design regulations, and we apply them with different levels of compliance sensitivity in districts. So we have a fine-tuning mechanism, and we could certainly add some requirements that would be particular to this district, just as we have requirements which are particular to the traditional business overlay district, such as 0-foot front setback.
So it looks like the takeaway for the subcommittee on that one is overall green light to explore what specific additional uses might be added in that area, and to start different degrees of architectural design and fine-tuning it.
Yeah, so let me ask one thing. The current Derry zoning ordinance is riddled with lists of very specific uses. And Ed Booton, God rest his soul, he told us years ago, you gotta either continue that, or you gotta change to sort of a meta description, more broadly, such as all retail versus hat shops and coat shops and, tobacconists and stuff. So let me ask you, what is the committee thinking of doing in terms of the level of specificity?
Certainly, I think our first approach, and this will be our first approach on this. We're really looking to solicit all the feedback, bring it to the board for initial steering. So there hasn't been a detailed conversation on this, but I believe our first approach would probably be to look at the existing zoning criteria and uses and try and match as much as possible before proceeding to add additional uses. And then we certainly can take that guidance of how can we capture, these 7 unique uses under a more meta term without making it too broad.
Yeah, so be careful, because that's what the lawyer told us not to do. He said, don't have a long list of very specific things and then add 3 very general things that will have you constantly in court.
Well, if we were to change something on this one here, I would accept 1.9, which is rezone MHDR2 to OBD.
Yep.
Or similar, that would be a higher priority than anything else that's on that list, following the matrix.
That does have the benefit of it's an existing zone, has the existing definitions and existing rules. What does everyone think about that?
It certainly simplifies the implementation. And then, am I understanding we have the guidance to examine specific architectural design criteria in that area?
I think, yes. So my suggestion is apply a proposed change to OBD, see how the uses map, see if they map well enough, and then potentially look at augmenting the architectural design regs and have a level of compliance that would apply to one or more of these zones that talk more about exterior residential form factor.
Will that require specifically designating a region, like the district, the gateway district?
We could do that. We could, in the architectural design regulations, we could define the gateway district.
Well, no. The architectural design regs talk about architecture. The way we would apply more stringent requirements is what we did, backing up Richard, is to create an overlay. So in the downtown, we have the central business district, and then we have the traditional business district overlay, which has more stringent requirements, but still has the same usage, right?
Oh, sorry, I was thinking more like how we would, in the actual architectural design regulations, you would, the gateway district would have a higher level of compliance.
You
with the regs.
specify that, but then you have now negated our idea of applying it as OBD. You're creating a new district, which we could do.
Yeah, that's what I thought that meant, was to change the MHDR region to OBD. That's what I thought 1.9 was.
And then in the architectural regs, or actually in the part of the zoning that applies to architectural regs, you say, in this zoning district, medium high, super high, whatever.
Yes, yes. Or you define.
And it's not actually in the architectural regs where the districts apply.
Which
It's
is
in
my
the zoning
question.
ordinance.
Right, correct, okay.
Yeah, so that we're not necessarily applying those stricter design criteria across the entire OBD.
Right, so you either create a new zone, or you create effectively a new zone by creating an overlay if you want to apply it selectively. But I don't think we want to mix zoning and architecture, because the architectural design regs are in the LDCRs and
Right.
and the levels of applicability are in the zoning ordinance, and that would be messy.
So does the chair feel it may be cleaner to create a new zone modeled after uses in OBD, and therefore,
Given these concerns, yeah, probably.
Yep, okay, we can do that, and that makes it easier to tailor the list of permitted
I mean,
uses.
we want to get away from, micro zoning, but
We
yeah.
do, but this is a very unique area, and I think there's good reason for it.
So that would perhaps be
Okay,
a good way forward.
okay. And then I also heard that maybe 1.8, that is definitely not a priority, and we could sort of ignore that.
Well, I mean, we can have that discussion with the town council and the public works department about what they want to consider doing for roadways. I'm just saying, I don't think that if a person came in and said, I want to open a business in my home that's larger than a special exception business, but it's pretty minimal, I'm really just going to take my living room and put a display case in it.
Right.
Doing an off-site exaction for them to do roadway changes, I think would not pass the rational nexus test.
No, I agree with that.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, it
Yeah.
would be hard,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
I think the subcommittee discussed that, knowing that certain amounts of these, particularly traffic calming measures, might be outside of the purview of the objectives, at least, of this, that one of the perhaps acceptable outcomes would be some more formal communication or liaison or coordination, simply to ensure that the feedback that was garnered from the community in areas where it was consistent was passed on to the appropriate bodies.
Sure, yeah.
So we could do that.
I think,
All right, what's the next?
I think
thing.
most of that traffic calming stuff is not gonna make it.
If I would predict, I would probably agree with you, but
Because it's just not, I mean,
They're all post-construction, because I think a lot of them, it would be dependent
Right,
on what
but-
actually happens, yeah.
but I deal on highway safety all the time, crosswalks. People are always asking for crosswalks, and they want a crosswalk to nowhere. And it's just not, they don't get approved.
Okay.
Most of that stuff that they're asking for traffic calming measures are not gonna make it even past highway safety, let alone through.
Okay, good feedback.
I just had one quick thing. So when we're talking about these micro businesses on the south side of Folsom, are we talking just on Folsom Road or down the neighborhoods there? Because I know they already have concerns with traffic. I think I'd be okay with them on Folsom, but not down the streets.
well, then you're creating a strip zoning district.
Yeah.
Because you
So-
can only apply these things to a district, you can't apply it to parcel A, B, C, D.
Right. So,
We've done that.
any of them.
Any of them could be,
So what, well, okay, so the way you have to look at this is, you've got 4 lanes coming through. So all of a sudden, once this opens up, the people that live on the street decide, I don't want to live here anymore. I'd like to sell to a business opportunity. So now a business opportunity moves into the first row of houses off the new lane. Now, all of a sudden, the people in the next row of houses are like, well, I don't want to live beside these businesses. I want the same opportunity. So it's an all or nothing thing. You can't just rezone the front strip and leave everybody else out. Everybody's got to have the same opportunity. So you've got to do the whole district, the whole block, all the way back to Crystal Ave. Everybody's got to have the same opportunity that the people in the front have.
Now, there may be things that control that. For example, some of the smaller side streets, they may not have garages. There may not currently be public on-street parking allowed. There may be no place to park more than, one car in the driveway. So there may be some physical limitations of the site
Right.
that would say, well, you can't really sell this for a cafe where you expect to have 10 people eating there at the same time because you've got no place for their cars.
Right.
And I think some of this effort to remember too, this is not something that, if we change this next year, this is going to happen. We're doing forward planning over the next 10, 20 years. Like that's what we're looking at. And so what we have 10 years, what we had 10 years ago on Route 28, heading towards Salem is very different from what we have now. You know, so you're looking to the future. We did that when we created the GC3, and now we have Hyla there, and, you know, those types of things. So you create, you protect what you can, but create opportunity for future growth.
Yeah, and just have the humility to realize that 50% of the time you're going to be wrong.
Absolutely,
Comes to mind the Arthur Karras property where we tried to make it a medical
yes.
business district, and there was ledge and no water, no sewer. He said, really? Let's move it back to residential. And we finally had to give up, say, yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So sometimes the dreams and visions just never become real.
It's
Right.
true.
But like Ms. Robideau says, the opportunity is there. You're creating the opportunity. Just because it's zoned for this doesn't mean it's going to become this.
Right.
But the opportunity for it to is. That's
Yeah,
all.
although I think we do need to be realistic about the scale of businesses
Yes.
vis-à-vis parking, because we are not a walkable community.
No, they're small lots. Unless somebody came in and bought a whole
Yeah.
section, nothing much is gonna happen.
They're small, and some of the, you know, some of the homes in there, they're not 8,000 square foot homes. I mean, they're not. So, you know, there's, the lots themselves constrain what can and can't happen there. So, but I'm pretty comfortable with like this first number 1 section,
Yeah.
if we wanted to move on to the
Yeah, I think
second one.
Yeah,
Good.
other than
Yeah.
some of the off-site improvement stuff, I would prefer to leave that out, because
We
I
can.
don't think it's
Yep.
going to make it.
No, absolutely. I put no's there, so, okay.
2.0 is like a wish list of what I'd like to have in my neighborhood? I mean, what is
Yeah,
that?
this is the pedestrian first streets and safety enhancements. So this is really the green dots on the thing, and it's just making sure that you know, we're making sure that we're not creating too many pedestrian conflicts for people who are walking on Folsom or in these other neighborhoods, Franklin and all of that. So you know, this.
I guess I'd
this
have
is
to
what we
see how
had.
that's worded. My first reaction was this sounds like a list for the town's capital improvement program.
I think it was more like if you're having, you know, if you're, say if we develop properties on Franklin Street, to make sure that you have, there are no sidewalks there currently. So if someone's doing a development, we want to make sure that we can add that if we need to. Mark's going, no sidewalks.
So I'm going to.
But sidewalks and lighting and
At the
making
risk
sure it's
of being a
safe.
little contentious, I've never heard Public Works say they want sidewalks
No,
anywhere.
I just said, he's like, no sidewalks.
So let's not be working at cross purposes here.
They're required by law to plow them.
The only way that would be,
Just for the record, we are getting 2 sidewalks on each, a sidewalk on each side of 4A.
Well, that's because the state's doing it, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
the only way sidewalks is feasible would be on the north side,
Exactly,
on the
that's,
development.
that's
It-
what I'm
It would have to
talking
be
about,
part of
yes.
the development itself. They're not going
Yes.
to be added on
So,
existing.
Yes,
I
no,
mean,
in other words, yeah.
If we want to do sidewalks, it's not a bad idea, but we have to get buy-in from Public Works and Town Council that they want to fund it, and that has never been the case, so I don't think we should go forward with a proposal to do that without, you know, before drafting it, get that buy-in, at least conceptually.
Okay.
Well, they wouldn't necessarily be if it was a private development, if sidewalks are within the development itself. It's like in West Running Brook, we want from development to
Yeah, but
development, we
it-
want
it's-
walkability.
It's the
Public Works has-
sidewalk to nowhere. I mean, if I want to develop one parcel, I'll pay the sidewalk in front of my house, but it goes nowhere, so typically.
They got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
If you don't start somewhere, you're never going to get it.
I understand, but I think that's going to meet resistance, so we need to think about that.
I agree, but it's got to start somewhere.
Okay, well, you're on the council, so you can have a vote to spend that money.
Well, it wouldn't be the town, that's the point. It wouldn't be, it would be part of the development, just like in West Running Brook. We're always promoting walkability. From one development to the next development, we want sidewalks.
Can you throw out a trial balloon to the town
Well,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be council money. It would be, this is our board. This is,
Yeah,
would be
no,
on the
I understand what you're
the
saying.
developer.
The difference in West Running Brook is we've got a village concept, at least in theory, and there's a connectivity to have all at once in one plan.
That's what we're trying to, well,
But
no.
this is going to be a
because-
bunch of individual people doing spot stuff here and there
Because,
over
well,
20 years.
And West Running Brook is too, because we were trying to get connectivity from the Keystone down to the Fairways, to Alexander Carr Park, over through to Don Ballpark. We were trying to make all that connectivity. That's what we were pitching to all these developers. And if we can make it happen, we don't have to make it mandatory, but we need to promote it. And then it has nothing to do with Public Works. That's all part, it's all inside the private sectors.
So everyone has to plow their own sidewalks?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the way it is, yes.
Yep.
They plow their own sidewalks.
Okay, well, I still predict heavy weather on that one, but we can try it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Because that's what we're promoting, walkability and accessibility.
Is there anything in that section 2.0 that the board would like to remove? We're talking lighting, visible crosswalks, and that would be between sites, not necessarily on the roadways.
The rear lot parking,
Yeah, so.
going to get resistance from that, because people don't like going in the back door. They want to go in the front door of a business.
And if there's not really enough width to the lot to have a drive to rear lot parking, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Okay.
I'd like to see that one gone.
Okay.
I think some of these things like bike pad amenities in the rail trail, that is either the rail trail committee or the capital improvement.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a
Yeah,
private
that's not a,
developer
that's
thing.
not a planning board issue. We left that one blank. Okay.
Is bike parking on commercial sites something that is,
I mean, I guess, would you consider having an LDCR that says, if you have a business, you have to have a bike rack in front of your store? I don't know.
I think that would be up to the business themselves. If they want people that are riding bikes to come into their store, they're going to have them.
Okay, well, I thought that kind of went along with the promoting walkability, promoting
does.
bikeability.
Yep. We
But-
do require it in the West Running Brook that if you have a development, you have to provide bike parking. But in this area, in the Gateway area, you could always just encourage, since it is so close to the rail trail.
You can always-
I'll go either way on that. We could require it or encourage it. It doesn't,
You know, the planning board either requires or doesn't. I mean, encouragement, I think, is in the realm of economic development department. But,
if it was one or the other, I'd say require it.
And
Like
if
you
they-
said, being so close to the rail trail.
If they have a real hardship over it, ask for a waiver.
Yeah.
now, we could partner with economic development and have grants or revolving loan funds or incentives to have people do bike amenities.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't really be a planning board thing.
Rail Trail Organization funded a lot of the pavement and everything.
Yeah.
And plus they
so
can pocket with-
is that a body that the planning board would like the subcommittee to reach out to and look into as part of this effort? I mean,
Well, that's Beverly, so she's been participating anyway.
So
I
I'll-
was referring to what Mr. O'Connor was talking about, the rail trail.
Oh.
I missed
You
what,
can.
I missed what John said.
Do we want to try to engage with the rail trail committee?
For site plan regulations, I don't think
Well,
that's
for whatever,
appropriate.
you know,
No.
likability we want. I mean, there's some history there, so I don't know.
I agree with Ms. Robideau on that.
Yeah.
I know, speaking from my experience, when I go biking with my wife, if it isn't an ice cream or a drink or a cup of coffee, I don't need a place to park my bike. For example, I'm not gonna park my bike at 8-Bit Ballers, which is right there, or at the American Haircut Place. So now you're gonna ask those people, make those people have a bike rack? I just know that when I go biking, if it's not something I could just get really quickly and put
good feedback. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not Europe. We don't have the kind of bicycle usage that they do in other places, so. And regardless of what we require or incentivize, it may not happen the way we envision it.
And
Okay.
most of these bikes that you see on the bike trails today now aren't my wife and I are nominally, I guess is the right word to use. We actually pedal our bikes. Most of these people are using the bikes that have a motor on it. They're huge. You need to have a license plate on it, but I just don't really park the bike.
Okay.
I'm trying to get loose.
And personally, I think the private walkability is an important aspect, especially to encourage, support of local businesses by local residents. If you are working nearby and you go get a sub, you can walk. It's going to reduce traffic. I'm not as inclined towards the bike requirements. It probably could be encouraged. I think that would be maybe the right approach there, but I do think the walkability benefits is an important one.
Yeah, and that's something staff can do, is encourage, that type of amenity on a site and say, hey, it might be nice if you threw a bike rack there, and the developer could say yes or no, and we could do that. It is nearing 9:30. Does the board want to go till 10? And try and get through this? There's not that much, I mean, if we're handling it as a group.
Well, let's
and-
try to get through
Okay.
as much as we can,
Okay.
because otherwise we're going to miss our ultimate deadline of getting it to the council.
Yes, okay.
All right, so now we're on to 3O, landscape and beautification. So I see you have some notes about bodies to engage. I mean, if you're talking about general neighborhood beautification, it's
So
probably not a planning board thing,
It's
right?
not,
I
no.
think the majority item here is specifically north of Folsom. Certainly the concerns of residents south of Folsom were that they'd be looking straight into, not necessarily a strip mall, but a heavily developed commercial district in the future. And there was discussion and requests of green buffers, et cetera, on the front of those lots to just help mitigate and maybe preserve some of the value across the street.
I mean, we have tree requirements on streets already.
Mhm.
Just taking a look at those.
Yeah, and just seeing maybe where we could beef it up a little bit, and maybe there's no change at all, and maybe the move for the board is if, people north of Folsom want to ask for landscape waivers, they're not granted unless there's a really strong reason why.
I mean, typically, the landscape buffers are between differing uses, where, like, commercial abuts residential, as opposed to just separating every piece of
Every
property
piece of,
with
exactly,
landscape
yeah.
buffers.
Yeah.
What is a green street?
I'm not sure where that came from.
3.5.
Yeah.
What's a green street?
I think the green streets are the more, just looking in the, sorry, I'm referring to the thing. I want to say that's the green streets are the ones where you've got got your lot, you've got your sidewalk, you've got the green strip thing, and then you've got the roadway. So it's that,
I
It's
can
a-
see that happening in
that's
a,
more urban or bigger roads.
or over Londonderry, where they got a clean slate. I mean,
Slate,
where we're
yeah.
doing infill development, I don't know how practical that is.
No, that's okay.
Because it's not being built in with exit 4A, so they're
Yeah.
not be able to put it in there.
I would kind of, given what we're trying to do, I'm thinking that's probably in the, is it realistic? No.
Okay, all right, that works. Okay.
So 4, mixed-use, small-scale, community-serving businesses. This is for which region, which sub-region?
This would be for all the regions.
All the regions, okay.
Yeah, I mean, some of them maybe not so much south of Folsom, but definitely to the redevelopment to the west and then north.
So I'll say 4.2, home-based businesses are already handled by special exception.
Mm-hmm.
Adaptive reuse of homes. Well, in certain regions, that's the only way you're gonna get.
Yeah, that would be
mixed
south.
use. That's sort of a gimme, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in some of these things are duplications, but they ended up in both couple categories.
Yeah, this is not necessarily, we're not pursuing all of the above, correct? I mean, this was just sort of what we've heard and what the folks said. So you talk about, this is a wish list in certain parts, and it's true. You're never gonna get certain things right by the exit of a highway.
What do we mean by boutique hospitality? I
That
know what
was-
the two words mean, but what are we really envisioning?
I
Like,
think it's more boutique hotels or bed and breakfast type.
so what we saw earlier tonight.
Yes,
was that
yes,
a
Westbrook
boutique?
Inn. Westbrook Inn is a boutique inn. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a boutique hotel or an inn, so it's smaller. You're under the 72 rooms. So you're talking more like it can be anywhere from 4 to 15, if you can fit it. That kind of thing. So smaller.
Now, when you got testimony from residents, do you think they were thinking as large as 15?
I think one
Or
of the.
were they thinking just fancy bed and breakfast?
I think they were saying like, no, like, 8-story, large,
Okay.
single plot.
I can see this south of Folsom. I can't see it north. We're missing huge opportunity if you start stuffing small stuff like that north. You're losing everything. I can see it south, I can't see it north. Especially bordering the industrial park. That's where your larger development is gonna be.
Mhm.
And to constrict that to small boutique coffee shops is just a waste of land.
Yeah.
So is that one of the uses we want to look at south of Folsom as, in this new zone that we're
Yeah.
proposing?
Yeah,
I would
definitely.
think so.
Yeah.
That's where it kind of makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
So the privately owned gathering spaces, it's a cool idea. I guess my question is, where is there a sufficiently large parcel that has multiple tenants where we could actually cite that?
I'm
Yep.
thinking specifically Kelson.
Well,
He owns the
north,
two, yeah.
north of Folsom.
North of Folsom, yeah.
East of Manchester Road, Crystal Ave. I hate using names, the former Hadco site. There are some parcels that would be large enough for something like that.
And I guess the question is, do we actually need zoning for that? I mean,
As of right now, yes, unless the state legislature passes the, what House bill is that, 465?
Yep, the pass your beer bill, that one?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Unless that gets passed, we do need zoning for that. And
Well, so-
even with zoning, I don't know if that's legal yet.
what, have a picnic table in the middle of a parking lot?
No, to be able to go from business to business, so you go into this business and you get yourself a drink and you say, oh, what's going on over there? And you want to walk over there. They're allowing that walkability with
It's
alcohol.
basically
Oh, alcohol,
open
okay, that's a whole
container,
different
yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, it's open container law,
Yes.
essentially.
I didn't realize that we were talking about alcohol.
Everything,
no.
all together.
Oh, be like Hood Plaza.
Yeah, meeting places, stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hood Plaza, if you're down at,
By the coffee shop.
yep, and then you want to do something halfway down, you can take your drink and go down there. Right.
All right, so
That's all part of it.
if that's what this means, I think we gotta put a question mark next
Yeah.
to the, because
You
the
know what?
Liquor Commission currently has its own rules on that. and
Yes.
They're fairly strict.
Correct.
We can hold off on that
Now,
one.
we could do non-alcoholic picnicking and
They,
gathering.
and as to your point, we don't need zoning for that. People can do that whenever they want.
No, yep.
So I'm thinking, that's already, you know,
Yeah.
if the owners of Hood Plaza want to put a bunch of picnic tables in the middle for all the restaurants and let people eat there instead of
Yep.
park,
They do.
who's to stop them?
Exactly. You don't need zoning for
That's not a
that.
zoning thing, that's a business model.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
All right.
So are we on to 5-0?
I think so.
So I guess the only thing is, on 4.7, we should probably think a little bit about what we mean for entertainment, because that usually means larger scale.
Like Tupelo?
Well, I mean, I suppose you could have 5 people, you know, having a tarot card reading, and that would be considered entertainment, but that's not what most people think
That's
of. They think of
profitable.
concert venues.
Okay.
You got the Opera House. No food there.
So I think we need to flag that entertainment use and
Okay.
maybe think about where it would fit, you know, north or south. Are there, you know, any parcels that are gonna, support that? And then what would be a minimum size for something like that to be economically viable? I used to actually work with the Arts Council and do concert promotion. And, you know, there's a minimum, house size that people need in order to make the numbers work, so
You got
there's that.
You got that large piece there behind T-Bones. There's a
That's-
huge parcel over there.
That's
I don't know how many
potentially
acres.
taken up. That's potentially taken up.
Well, that's not in the district anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay. All
So
right, yeah,
I'm
we'll
not
look
against
at it.
entertainment,
Yeah.
I just think we need
Yeah.
to think
We
about,
can-
like, usually entertainment, in order to be a valid business model, needs to be larger scale, that's all I'm saying.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, we can look at it. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any parcels right now that are large enough to create a concert venue, but,
Yeah.
you know, so we can, so we should, yeah, we should look at that. Okay. Okay.
All right, so moving on to 5.
Again, it's looking at 20 years from now, if
So-
there is consolidation and so on and so forth.
Those are all things we simply won't add, right?
Correct.
Because I suspect they're not in there already. Well, other than maybe storage facilities might be a use in the industrial zone.
The industrial, yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, they're already there.
Yeah, and these are all things just permitted use lists to look at.
So, with the exception of 5.1, and I noticed in some of the comments, it said competition for Walmart. Well, competition for Walmart is a big box store. So, number one, do I think we would get one in there? No, probably not, but should we eliminate it? I mean, there's several, you know, I won't list it by name, but it's in here several times. Grocery store, which is big box. As I had said, competition for Walmart.
No, we thought that was gonna happen when Walmart first came here, because
Yeah.
typically when they do land surveys, and usually other companies wait, see where they go,
Yeah.
and they follow. That's when you got the,
So I'm not so quick to eliminate that one.
So I think you're right, Randy, because probably a lot of this feedback came from folks who were thinking about what they have now, how to preserve it, and then what they would internally use.
Yeah.
But that's not really what the council asked us to do. They asked us to figure out what would be a great attraction right off the highway, and certainly, you know, big box stores probably would like to be right off the highway.
Right off the highway, exactly. I'm not so quick to remove that.
Okay.
Gas stations, yes. Storage facilities, yes. I would remove that. I don't even know if I'd remove a strip mall. I don't think there's a big enough parcel for one, but those are the two. Definitely 5.1 I would not remove, and I'd take a hard look at 5.2.
Okay.
How about 5.5?
And then-
I'd remove that.
Okay. And then 5.6 is basically just a
Rehash of,
rehash, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
There were a lot of requests for Market Basket, Whole Foods.
I was trying to avoid that.
Right, but there was.
Name brands,
I was at
yes.
those meetings too, and there was a lot of,
Yeah.
can we get a Trader Joe's? Well, we can't control that, but we certainly would not say no if they wanted to come in.
Mm.
There's that too.
All right,
So-
moving on to 6.
Mr. Chair, one more. The minimizing curb cuts, how deep do we cut? No pun intended.
So what was the intent of that?
I think traffic mitigation and consolidating entryways into adjacent businesses that have connected parking lots.
So typically, when you're going to do that, you have internal access drives.
Right.
And that's somewhat space consumptive. So again, I'm not sure how practical that is, given the available land in these districts.
Okay.
I'm not,
Yeah.
certainly if we were doing greenfields like they're doing over in Londonderry, oh yeah. But it's a nice idea, but I don't know that we could actually fit it.
Okay.
Well, the other issue too is Londonderry, it was one large parcel that was developed pre-planned. We're taking separate lots, and how do you tell this developer that he has to connect with this developer across property lines?
You can't really.
Exactly. So,
Right.
so,
So a nice idea, but probably not, again, practical,
Mhm.
given the lay of the current land.
Okay.
All right, so 6. All right, so we're going to support something. I assume that means we allow those to be
Added uses.
added uses. I mean,
Yeah.
support them
Added uses.
kind of indicates, more than that, more in the economic development realm, but
I actually agree with all of them.
Okay, we can do that.
sure. Traffic management and control, wow. I'm probably going to hate all of these personally. I will confess that where I live, almost every time I go somewhere, I take Beaver Lake Road, which is a 30-mile-an-hour load with very aggressive flashing signs, and I'm sure that all the people who live there wish that no one who was outside their neighborhood drove there, but given the traffic network of Derry, you kind of got to do that. And so I think this cut-through traffic is kind of a NIMBY thing, in my opinion. I'll come out and say it.
Well,
Yeah.
besides that, it's really not even,
We can't
it's
control
not our
that.
purview. We don't
We
control
can't
this.
control it, yeah.
Only the council can control that.
And then combining lots, we really can't control that either. That's going to be landowner driven.
Yep.
And then the other 7.2, that is nothing that we have under our purview.
Nope.
And again, there are places that make sense, but
We can't do it.
we can't do it, and you have to look at the street network, because, I mean, in New York City, it might make sense when you got regular blocks. In Derry, where all the roads are where the colonial cart path used to be,
Yeah.
not so much.
So I will say there were specific, very specific roads that were highlighted as currently being used as cut-throughs. And, perhaps since we're going to address some of them from the first section in some kind of communication, this is one of those items that can be forwarded to town council as a concern.
I think we could do that, but I can tell you, if you were to ask townwide, there's probably 100 neighborhoods that want the same protection. I mean, that's one of the reasons that cul-de-sacs and dead ends are such a popular housing option. Even though our master plan and our subdivision regulations encourage multiple points of connection. All right, moving on
8.
to 8.
These are all uses
Have
to
we
look
sort of
at.
talked about this in a way? Or are these bigger scale versions of what we've talked about?
I think it's just
I think
more
there's some
specific
additional
uses.
uses,
Yeah.
like food truck park.
Yeah, I can see the food truck park going with the, private gathering space,
Yeah.
but literally a permitted use of a food truck park, that seems way too specific.
Yeah.
That seems like a hatch store to me.
Also
Yeah.
very seasonal.
Yeah. I mean, they can go wherever they're invited.
I think some of these actually do somewhat duplicate previous ones.
They do.
Maintain existing scale. That's under hospitality and visitor. What does maintain existing scale mean in that context?
I think that's probably something that came out of the discussions south of Folsom, that if you're going to add, hotels or, like smaller hotels or bed and breakfasts and things, to kind of keep the scale in that neighborhood the same. So that's more, how you'd handle that with adaptive reuse and architectural design.
Yeah, because that's basically
Yeah.
the same thing as a boutique hotel, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
The food truck parked outside.
8.6, maintain streetscape goals. What are our I am only aware of one zone in town that has streetscape goals, and that's the TBOD.
Well, we require street trees on every site plan.
Yeah, and there was another section
Yeah.
that talked about trees in the
Yeah,
streets.
Okay,
To me, streetscape is a more encompassing
broader, okay, all right.
Signage.
We can
urban
take-
facade
We
kind
can
of
take
thing.
that out. Okay.
It's
I
hard.
mean, if we had a place where we could do that, but I can't think of anywhere in town where that would really apply.
Yeah, okay, that works.
Yeah, it's hard to envision that happening. I mean, and in the distant future, if there's consolidation of lots, then that's internal to the lots anyway, like a village feel.
All right, flexibility through overlays and form-based approaches. So those are tools to accomplish a goal, and I don't have any objection if we find that the right way to do something is to use one of those tools. But I think they're tools to accomplish the rest of the stuff in the plan, not an end in of themselves.
That's right. I think these got lumped in, maybe not necessarily miscommunication, but lumped in with the rest of the rows. But really, we did want to have a section on, are there any specific of these tools that we don't want to
Well, so
use, or are they all
My view
open?
is architectural design regs are very important
Yep.
for adaptive reuse of single-family residences, and I'll kind of use that term broadly, right? And I think we can create that, and then you have to say where it applies, and if you create a little mini district, and say it applies here, that's fine. If you want to create a bigger district and have it apply in part of it, then you have to do the overlay thing. So that it kind of, I mean, we talked about allowing uses, but then having different requirements for those that are fronting on Folsom as opposed to the side streets. So that might be where you do an overlay. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so it kind of gets to the question, and maybe we need to take a look at some of these before being able to answer this, but, in some of the industrial zones, are we adding a use to the zone, or are we creating a new zone specific to this area that duplicates a lot of the existing uses and then adds some of the ones we've talked about, or is there an overlay? Kind of looking for some guidance as to what the board would prefer, what you think will get through most efficiently, so on and so forth.
I think you got to actually put it on paper and see how it looks.
I'm definitely not in favor of 9.4 at all.
What's 9.4? Oh, so
Form-based.
we had a presentation on that, and that's a whole different way to get to an end.
Yeah. In the end, it's
I-
turning your commercial into residential.
Honestly, I think for our purposes, we can accomplish that same end with our architectural design regulations, which is a process we already have in place.
Yep.
We could, I suppose, take a district and use it as a little test bed for form-based zoning, but form-based zoning is very different from our whole zoning ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I don't care
So
for that at all.
I'm going to suggest as a primary tool where we want to, maintain existing scale, residential look, blah, 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 especially south of Folsom, that we use architectural design regs as opposed to try to go to,
Okay.
introduce a whole nother tool into our ordinance that makes it a little bit more
Yep.
irregular.
Okay.
That's why we posed the question.
Do not sacrifice design quality. Oh, that means Grenice gets to have his granite?
Yes. That's,
Yes.
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 9.5 is all about Mr. Grenice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the cottage courts, I think, well, who knows what's gonna happen? Given all the nonsense that's going through Concord, it may be a moot point.
Yeah.
It's a cozy name for an idea that we tried to sell in Derry many times and it never
I know.
got off the ground. Maybe now it's different because everyone realizes, but I'm wondering if this is potentially enough of a contentious issue that we try to handle it separately, because if, we'd like to get this done, and if that's gonna cause spin,
Yeah, we
Maybe it
can
gets-
leave it as a lower priority.
Yeah, realistically, where is it gonna go?
Right.
We don't, the larger pieces of land aren't gonna allow. So,
well, I mean, if we had massive urban redevelopment and
Yeah.
somebody came in and bought up 3 blocks worth of houses,
then you have it.
sure, but I just don't see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't think they're gonna buy up 3 blocks of housing to put in
No,
cottage clusters.
no.
Well,
they're
depends on
gonna
what they can sell them
smack
for,
a
but yeah.
3-story multifamily.
Yeah.
So again, the defined area for overlay, I mean, I think that depends upon whether you need it. It's simpler to not have overlays. The alternative to having overlays is to have a lot of microzones.
Yeah.
If the microzones are too small, then it's potentially spot zoning. But that's a group, there's no bright line there.
I mean, I think we divided this entire area into 3 sub-regions conceptually just for discussion, and I don't see there being more than that degree of, further.
And in terms of
Zoning.
inclusive, continuing engagement, yes, you gotta keep everyone involved. We gotta sell it to all the stakeholders, we gotta sell it to the taxpayers, we have to sell it to the council. There will be a lot of people who, when they hear of a public hearing of proposed zoning changes, who have never come to any of the visioning sessions, will come out of the woodwork. So we do need to continually work on that.
Okay.
You guys are snickering, I can tell you. Have you ever seen that before? Never? Okay.
All right. Do you have a target date for when you would like first drafts back to the board?
Well, so
For
we're
consideration.
moving into summer schedule. So let's see if we can put the timeline of the committee's work into our summer schedule so that we can actually get
Okay.
something by the end of August to the council, because I think that's what they're expecting.
Okay, all right.
I
We've-
don't know how feasible that is.
Yeah,
Again,
we won't have drafts for the next meeting. That's not feasible.
how about breaking it into pieces? Giving it to us piecemeal as opposed to one big thing to digest? I mean, this was pretty hard. Take one piece. Get that right, give it to us, we'll work on it, and then, kind of pipeline it as opposed to, it's what they used to call the waterfall schedule in product development, where you beep, 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 2 years later, something comes out, it's like, yeah, we don't have time for that. We gotta do agile development, where like constant little releases come out.
Okay. We can plan on having something, some form of something for you by the July meeting.
Yeah, I mean, try,
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
nothing that causes productivity like having an imposed deadline.
I think we'd like to also ask the board if there's any additional members we'd like to add to the subcommittee. People would like to be actively engaged in this detailed part of the process.
Do you think more people will make it move faster? Or is that the mythical man month?
You know, we have 3 planning board members right now.
If other members who actually want to do drafting, as opposed to do critiquing and review, would like to join the committee, I'm welcome them to expand the committee so we can get work done.
We're kind of in the final stretch here. We have maybe 4 more meetings of the subcommittee, realistically, in order to get all of this drafted. And
I mean, I'll be willing to help, I'll be willing to come, and I'm actually pretty good at drafting legalese stuff after all the training I've had, so you could give me a piece to work on.
we'll probably have
Anyone
to
else like
discuss
to
this.
volunteer for that homework? Not seeing everyone leap into the fray here, okay.
Okay. All right, so we'll reconvene the subcommittee next Tuesday?
Yeah, next Tuesday.
All right, so I will say that in terms of scheduling, it has been brought to my attention that there have been complaints that all the committee meetings are completely remote. There is no in-person attendance available for members of the public.
That is incorrect. We hold the meetings on the second floor of the municipal center. They're scheduled for room 236, which has room for many people. The group has been small enough, Mr. Malaby has been attending, that we've moved it into my office, just so that we can all be closer together and work. But it is absolutely open to the public, and people have chosen to attend virtually.
Okay. Just checking. All right, so I will be at your disposal when I'm not watering my lawn to take on homework assignments to help draft stuff.
Okay, so the next meeting of the subcommittee will be next Tuesday at 1 PM. 1 PM or noon? What are we doing? Noon. There will be a notice on the planning board webpage under the Gateway Committee tab, which is located in the green section in the top left.
I will say that the one advantage I bring is that I'm work emancipated, so I don't have to do this only during my lunch hour. Anything else to come before the board tonight? Given that we're 5 minutes after our curfew, we should probably adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by O'Connor, seconded by Malamy to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you very much for hanging in there.